Most people look for exercise because it makes themselves feel better, because that's the only way they express their emotion, energy, emotion. So I have to teach them other ways they can have expression to express that emotion. Because if they don't, if a person has too much emotion in their body, then what happens at night is that emotion overfloods their brain like a toilet being backed up. And what happens is this person starts overthinking about their life. And to numb that overthinking, wine, drugs, some eating can help numb that down a little bit. So a person that's stuck in the root chakra usually is disconnected from their body. The more you're stuck in the root chakra, the more you're disconnected from your body, because the more you're working from the ego, in my opinion, there's no science prove that, but the more you're working from the ego and the GPS system to keep you safe on earth, and you lose the connection to your higher self and to spirit and to something bigger than yourself, to have faith. So you're stuck in fear, not faith. And the brain only entertains one at a time. You can't have faith and fear.
Hi, I'm Sahara Rose, and welcome back to the Highest Self Podcast, a place where we discuss what makes you your soul's highest development. If it's your first time listening, welcome. I've been doing this podcast for over 5 years, and I really started it because I believe that there was a need, and there still is a need, to make spirituality more grounded and relatable and fun and diverse. And I started this podcast just wishing I had a safe space for myself to have these kinds of conversations, and it has since turned into a global movement of over 35 million downloads, which I still can't really compute with my mind. But the most amazing part are the conversations that I've had with people like Nate, who you're going to hear from today, and all of the wisdom that so many of these incredible guests have shared here on these episodes. So if you just started listening, hello, we got like 500 episodes for you to dive into. And if you're here all the time, how excited are you to have Nate back on the podcast? So I'm going to keep this intro short because the interview is 2 hours long. This is literally a masterclass. This is better than a paid masterclass that you would get on Adrenal Fatigue. Trust me, because I've signed up for many of them, and this is better. This is the most in-depth overview of adrenal fatigue that I have ever seen. And I am someone who's really looked into this because I have suffered from it. I have been diagnosed with adrenal fatigue multiple times since I was 21 years old. And if you don't know my story, when I was 21 years old, my body completely shut down, went into perimenopause, and doctors said that I would never be able to have children. I had zero estrogen, zero testosterone, and really bad adrenal fatigue, digestive issues, and a whole host of other imbalances, which brought me on my healing journey to Ayurveda, eventually to spirituality, eventually to living my dharma, my soul's purpose, and then being here with you guys today. So I share some of the gems of my journey along the way as you're listening to this, but I'm so excited to have Nate back on because he was on the podcast about 6 months ago, and it has been one of the most shared episodes ever. So I found Nate on TikTok, where I find many of the guests, because I like to hear from people that aren't like on every single podcast with their perfectly polished pitch and story. Like, I like hearing from diverse people from different walks of life. So if you did not hear the first episode with Nate, I highly recommend listening to it. It's all about why you have digestive and hormonal issues from a spiritual cause. I will link that episode in the show notes. You can even pause this now and then go back and listen to it. Or I'll just give you a little synopsis on his story because I think that it gives so much more oomph and depth to the wisdom that he shares. Because he is a genius. Like, you're going to see just his wisdom of science and the mind-body connection, and then bringing it into this deeper sense of purpose. But his story did not start out this way at all. So just a little Cliff Notes version of it, and you can listen to him tell his whole story on the podcast. But he, as a child, grew up in a very gang-ridden environment right outside of New York, and he was born as this is his words, so I'm just going to put this in air quotes, a crack baby. His mother was addicted to heroin, and he had to learn from a very young age survival. He, experienced a lot of hardship in his life. He was even homeless for periods of his life. His dad was dealing drugs and would even get him involved in these situations, and he needed to learn from a very young age how to use his intuition. Otherwise, he could have been killed. And he knew that the only way out of this poverty-stricken area was for him to get into sports, because those were the only people that he would see get scholarships. So he every single morning would show up, and he told his teacher, I'll tell you everything about my life and what's going on with my family if you open up the school gym early every single morning, and I'll be there at 6 a.m. and you shoot hoops with me. So he did that and got on the basketball team, and then eventually got a scholarship to college to actually play football. And in college, just learned so much about exercise and physiology and became a trainer. And then from becoming a trainer, started to realize that a lot of our imbalances were connected to the mind and connected to the fashion, connected to deeper things. And then started to get even deeper, studying with Paul Chek and realizing how many of our physical symptoms actually come from childhood trauma. And then he started to put together the pieces of his life and starting to heal the trauma within himself. And that led to him having greater vitality and health, but also a deeper sense of purpose and following through with his dreams. So he's been sharing a lot of incredible videos all about different forms of syndromes that we see in our society today, from adrenal fatigue to fungus and candida, and the list goes on. But what I love about him the most is just where he comes from and the fact that he's sharing this in such a unique way. And you'll just hear his voice and his depth. And it's so refreshing for me to hear it from someone who really needed to learn it for their own survival, their own selves. And it to me speaks a million times further that he was able to cultivate this wisdom despite the challenges that he was brought up with, despite not having money, even being homeless, and so many different obstacles that would have easily knocked many people off course. The fact that he was able to not only overcome this, but be able to share this wisdom with us today is so invaluable. And it's people like him that I really love to support. I've been helping him with writing his book and getting his message out there. And he's supporting me in getting stronger and more fit and even healing my digestion. So it is always such a beautiful opportunity to have him back here on the podcast. He actually came down to Miami specifically to record this podcast in person, which just means so much. And you're just going to get so much from this episode. Like, I don't even want to give it away because he goes into the stages of adrenal fatigue, the symptoms related to each one, how to heal it, diet, exercise, nutrition, but also he opens up and shares that it's not always a hero's journey either. You know, in the first episode, he inspired thousands of you to reach out to him and to, you know, really see how he has been able to take nothing out of something. But he shared that he still continued to struggle, especially with his own adrenal fatigue and social media and, you know, going to the next goal after the next goal. So at the end of the episode, he really opens up around why he chose to actually move back home to New York and the ancestral healing that he has been doing. And it's just such a powerful conversation where we both open up a lot about our own journeys, struggling with stress and perfectionism and adrenal fatigue, while also giving really tangible tools. He's just such a gem. You're going to learn so much from him. And I can't wait to see the feedback that this episode gets. The last episode was 90 minutes, even longer. So there's like even 30 more minutes of gems. And we did it in person too, which is just like always the best energy. And I know you're going to love it. So even if you don't know what adrenal fatigue is, maybe you've heard about it, we really start from the ground up and give so many tips and tools. You're going to want to have your notebook for this one. I also recommend having like a cup of tea because this is really like a portal. This is a masterclass that we're going to go into. So have a cup of tea, get your notepads. You're going to want to take some notes. You're probably going to listen to this episode 3 times, just saying. So without further ado, let's welcome Nate Ortiz back on the Highest Self podcast. Okay, if you come to my house, you're going to do 2 things. 1, you're going to pet Chubby because he needs to say hi to every single person. And then 2, I'm going to show you my cabinet of Anima Mundi herbals because I am proud of it. My Mucuna, my Rose, my Golden Chai. It is all so beautiful and delicious and sacred. I am really obsessed with their products. They are on a mission to bring ancient remedies to the modern world. It is founded by Costa Rican herbalist and dear friend of mine, Adriana Ayales, who has been on the podcast and taught in Rose Gold Goddesses before. They use eco-friendly packaging in recyclable glass or biodegradable bags. It's all made in the US with certified organic herbs and wild and sustainably harvested plants in a vegan and gluten-free kitchen. And most importantly, their products contain zero fillers, binders, and flow agents. These are pure botanical powders, which honestly, it's very hard to find on the market. So like I mentioned, some of my favorites are the Mucuna and Rose. They're also delicious. Whenever I'm buying a gift, this is what I get for people. And you can get it for 15% off by heading over to animamundiherbals.com and using coupon code SAHARA15 for 15% off. Again, that's animamundiherbals.com with code SAHARA15 for 15% off, and you can find that link in the show notes. Happy drinking! Welcome back, Nate, to the Highest Self podcast. It's so good to have you here and to be here in person in Miami.
I'm super, super excited. So thank you so much for having me. The first podcast that we did together was life-changing, so I'm super excited to be here.
Well, the first question I would love to ask you again, if your answer has changed, is what makes you your highest self?
I didn't think he was going to ask me that for the second time. Okay, so the first time I said being honest with myself. For this one, staying clear. I think a lot of times in today's world especially, there can be a lot of distractions where we can lose focus on what we're here for. So what makes me my highest self is I'm able to always, when I feel like I'm getting out of balance, to readjust and get clear again on why I'm doing what I'm doing. And as soon as I get clear, then I start getting rid of distractions. Then I start basically getting myself back to being balanced and staying consistent with my dream. So staying clear is what makes me my highest self.
I love that. So in the last episode, you told us about your story. And I think that that was the most riveting and surprising part for all of us, because I found you on TikTok because of your wisdom, and you are truly like, I call you like the gangsta medical medium, but your story is beautiful, and it just is such a testament to yourself. And I'm going to link that first episode we did below, so you don't need to tell your full story, but if you can, for people first hearing you today, can you tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are right now, and why you have this sense for intuition that I feel that your upbringing helped cultivate within you, even if it was through trauma?
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, my upbringing is going to have a lot of correlation with today's podcast as far as the things that come with it, right? Like I spoke about it in the first episode and I made it's a heroic story, but at the same time, these things can have consequences. And I think, and then today I'm going to be relating a lot to the subject because I've been through a lot of it, but my story made me who I am today and helped me get to where I am today. For the simple fact that it helped me stay clear and basically consistent and persistent towards what I wanted in my life. I saw the worst of the worst. So I'm like, okay, if this is what, an example like where my family's at, living, in the ghetto or going through drug abuse and, people dying, that's the worst case scenario, right? And if I repeat those patterns, I'm going to end up like that. So my number one thing was like, okay, I have to do the opposite. And if I do the opposite, then I know I can go where successful people end up at, right? Having a college degree, that doesn't mean you're successful, but I'm doing the opposite of what my family is doing. But my upbringing helped me a lot for the simple fact of it. When I went through hard times with business or school, I know that it wasn't as hard as it was for a lot of my friends or the people I know, because I've been through a lot worse than that one situation, right? So if I fail the test, or if I'm going through business and I'm not getting clients, or if I'm trying to lose weight and I can't lose the weight, I'm dealing with stress, I have a very strong tolerance towards stress for the simple fact of my upbringing, right? So it helped me stay persistent and stay consistent towards what I want in my life, and I never felt down from it. But it did come with side effects too, right? So one of the things of that is, after a while, when you really come from nothing or you come from a stressful background, you can kind of be addicted to the stress. So one of the things that I started to notice in my life is, okay, why can't I have a good time sitting down throughout the day on a day off, and I have this urge that I have to do something, right? Or have this consistent hunger that doesn't go away as far as for success. And I thought it was just because I wanted to be successful, but I started to learn a little more about myself. I'm like, oh, this is actually because it's a deep fear that I'm going to end up still being in that situation that my family was in when I was growing up, or going back to the ghetto, right? So when you have that, it can create an imbalance in your life. So being aware of that made me study the things that we're going to talk about today, because it was the only way, it was the biggest side effect of my life. Mm-hmm. I couldn't enjoy the success. I couldn't enjoy anything because I was stuck in this fight or flight. So I had to learn on like, okay, let me find some more information about this. I couldn't find the information anywhere. I had to go deep to find information. And I'll be giving you, like when I speak about a couple of things, I'll refer a lot of things because it's pretty hard to find. And I have an opinion on why it's hard to find. I think people profit a big time off of us being in fight or flight all the time. But yeah, that's how it got me here. So my story was, I had the ability to share my story on your the first time we did a recording. So thank you for that. But it got me very far in my life. And one of the reason why my upbringing continues to help me is because it helped me stay persistent. I know what it's like to go the other way, and I don't want to be there.
And I think a lot of times our childhood traumas are the things that make us have this hyper-aroused nervous system, right? Or even hypo-aroused, depending on how your nervous system responds. So the hyper-aroused state, which I relate to that, of not being able to take that day off because you're like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? What can I do to move the needle forward? Because oftentimes when you saw your parents hustle to survive, that's all you know. So if you never seen an example of someone resting or enjoying themselves, of course, you're going to feel like, not only am I not worthy of it, but if I do it, I'm going to put my life at risk. So of course, we're going to keep looking for these things. And I even notice it as an entrepreneur, because as an entrepreneur, there are countless things for you to be stressed about. It could be something on your social media. It could be your emails, your this, your that. It's like we put ourselves in these situations in a way to like heal that very thing that needs to be addressed. I think a lot of us who maybe are attracted to entrepreneurship have these types of backgrounds. And for some people, that has gone on for so long, they're in the hypo-aroused state where their nervous systems shut down and freeze. So something that's been in my life and in my awareness for over 10 years now is this concept of adrenal fatigue. So I remember the first time in my early 20s, I did the cortisol saliva tests, and they were like, you have such low levels of cortisol because your cortisol levels, your stress hormone, has been high for so long that your body has shut down. And I was like, well, I don't feel like that. Like, I got more to do. Like, I'm in my early 20s. And, throughout my life, I took a couple more of these tests. And sometimes it was like high, and I was like excited that the cortisol was high because that means it's better than the super low. But more recently, it was the super low again, which I shared with you. I was like, is this horrible? And I share this because I'm someone that maybe people are like, oh, Sahara has it figured out. Like, Sahara even has a spiritual podcast, but it's like even adrenal fatigue is showing up in my field and awareness. And I think most people probably out there have it. So can you share a little bit about what adrenal fatigue is?
Yes. So adrenal fatigue is, in the medical system, is not really respected. And it's because if you go to a medical doctor, they're looking for Addison's or Cushing's, right? If your cortisol levels are too high or if your cortisol levels are too low. But there's something in between, right? And if you fall in between that, then the chances of you being diagnosed correctly or, looked at like you're crazy is very high, because usually people that diagnose that is going to be naturopathic doctors, holistic doctors, and more and more people are going for that type of help. But adrenal fatigue, there's 3 stages. Stage 1, what we learn, is the alarm stage. That's when the adrenals are pumping out a lot of cortisol and the cortisol levels are high. When the cortisol levels are high, we feel great because we have energy all day. Cortisol levels get you in fight or flight, and fight or flight works because we're in survival mode. So the higher the cortisol levels are, the more of the fight or flight that we turn on the nervous system, the more the reptilian brain is working. The reptilian brain only cares about safety and security. So if you're just starting off being an entrepreneur and you have high levels of cortisol, it can be a benefit because you're doing everything you can. You're going to push through being tired. You're not even going to feel your body hurting because cortisol and adrenaline can numb the body. So this person feels like they're unstoppable. And you usually see this. This person's able to go to work. This person's able to do overtime and work and then leave work, go home, change, and then go to the gym. And then have no problem staying in shape. And then you get to stage 2, adrenal fatigue. And this is the resistance stage. And the stage 2 is when a person's circadian rhythm switches. So normally during the day, especially during the morning, your cortisol levels go up. And then throughout the day, they kind of come down. Fight or flight comes down. The parasympathetic nervous system turns on. And this is when melatonin levels come up. And this is for rest and digest, the parasympathetic nervous system. What happens is people have, when cortisol levels are very high, very high, very high, then it starts to come to a point where the cortisol levels are not being produced enough during the morning. So now this person has a hard time getting out of bed. They have a hard time even, they can sleep for 8 hours and feel as if they didn't get any sleep that night. It's really hard for them to get their day going. They can't start the day without caffeine or stimulant. And what I see with clients is when I start doing, paperwork with them, you'll first start seeing a cup of coffee, then 2 cups of coffee. Then it can go up to like 3 to 5 cups of coffee in stage 2, just to get their day started, because coffee turns on the sympathetic nervous system and your cortisol levels. So then you have, during the nighttime, their cortisol levels are usually up and the melatonin levels are down. So they consider themselves to be night owls, or they can't go to sleep at night. They're up all night. And what happens usually with that person is, by the time nighttime comes and they can't go to sleep, they go to sleep late, and then they start the cycle all over again. And it's a nasty cycle. And then you get stage number 3, which is the crash, which is usually when the person's not producing enough cortisol throughout the day. And when a person's not doing that it comes with a lot, and you can still get tested and still not come back with Addison's disease. So you'll start having many, many different issues. And I could break down all the symptoms, because adrenal fatigue symptoms are all relatable for each stage, but they get worse. They turn on and they give you more pain. Anything in life anytime the nervous system is trying to indicate something to you and trying to teach you something, the more you ignore it, we bring more pain. And sometimes it's pain that comes as a consequence of our luck in life, right? Like you can't catch a break in life. So it may not even be with your body. It can also be with your relationships, with the universe, on even attracting things towards you. So it goes deep. So that's adrenal fatigue. And there's many different things, and it gets deep, because when I work with a client and what I see with people is that you have to understand, when you have any stage of adrenal fatigue, you have too much cortisol level production, too much stress. Usually you see people that are resistant towards the fact of hearing that they have too much stress, especially if they're a go-getter. So what happens is, too much stress, a person thinks about, well, when I was in my 20s, I never had this problem. When I was in my, early 20s or even early 30s, I had never had this problem. So trying to get this person to recognize that they're too stressed is very difficult, because they usually come back with good lab tests. Number 2, you have to understand, when you turn on the cortisol levels to be high, the more stressed you are, the more you're working from the root chakra. The more you work from the root chakra, the less energy that goes up to the highest chakra, the 7th chakra. So usually you find these people stuck and thinking and subconsciously not having a belief or an understanding that there's something bigger out there to help them on their journey. So any little thing that comes as a threat towards their safety and security, they're gonna go crazy, not crazy, but they're gonna put more stress on themselves, because they think they have to control everything, even situations they have no control over. So the adrenals, which produce cortisol and adrenaline, attach to the root chakra, but also your sacral chakra and your solar plex. It's the one gland that connects to all 3. So then you'll start seeing reproductive issues, digestive issues. And for people that have a hard time understanding that on a more spiritual side, I can break it down scientifically, right? Because cortisol levels produce fight or flight. Fight or flight turns off digestion. So there goes your solar plex. The more fight or flight you're in, you go into something called progesterone steal, where your body steals nutrition from vitamin B5 and cholesterol that feeds your reproductive hormones, your sex hormones. It steals that to feed cortisol instead, to support cortisol. So then you'll start having imbalances with procreation. So that's chakra 2. And then chakra 1 is safety and security. This person's going to have a lot of issues with safety and security. Any threat, safety, security, and tribe, family issues, any threat to either one of those, or there's going to be some type of imbalance. And I'm going to go deeper on that.
Well, I want to stop you right there, because that was my exact lived experience in my early 20s I got really deep into doing Ashtanga yoga. So 3 hours a day, I was practicing this very intense form of yoga. I was a raw vegan. I was in a really stressful period of my life. If I didn't know what my purpose was, and I didn't know what my job was going to be. Then I was also fighting with my family. So that root chakra stuff and them saying, you need to get a job for money. and I stopped producing any hormones. So I stopped getting my period for 2 years. And then when I got blood tests, they said you've gone into perimenopause because you're no longer producing any estrogen and testosterone. So you're never going to be able to have a child. And then that was related to me getting osteoporosis earlier in life. So like everything you're saying right there, it's just like reminding me that the cortisol was really at the root of a lot of this, especially from more of like a scientific level, as well as the spiritual level of I had a root chakra imbalance of I didn't feel safe. I felt like I needed to like do something or go somewhere, figure it out to survive, which then linked to my sacral of not feeling in my feminine, which was related to not getting my period. And I also had horrible digestive issues. Like I couldn't eat food without being in so much pain, which made me not want to eat food. Because I'm like, I don't want to eat and like be like on the couch, like hurling for so long. And that made me more afraid of food, which made me more controlling, which made me more obsessed with the raw vegan thing. And it just kept linking on. Then I couldn't focus on the heart chakra, the throat chakra, the third eye, the crown, because I had to just focus on what would heal myself. So like everything you're saying has been my experience. And I feel so many people listening to this right now, especially women, especially I'm noticing in the millennial, and I'm going to assume in the Gen Z generation as well, because we're the generation that has grown up with screens and internet and social media and things to do and like always feeling like you're running behind, as well as diet trends and obsession with thinness and you know all of those things. So I think what you're speaking into, this generation, this is our work to resolve it so it doesn't continue to pass on.
100%. And most of my clients are women. And you're starting to see women in their 30s go through menopause. I got them as my clients, right? I had a client that couldn't have a period for 14 years since she was 14 years old.
Wow.
And we got her first period and she's trying to work on having a child now because of too much stress, right? And the thing is when the person, so the childhood trauma is the first place I will look for. The reason why is because childhood trauma is subconscious. And most of the things we do today, we know better. We know we should change. But subconsciously, changing anything to be subconscious takes time and it takes repetition. There's 2 ways you get into the subconscious: repetition or trauma. So a trauma that is subconscious, you have to handle in the 4 layers of energy is what I call it. You have to deal with the muscular system. You have to deal with the nerves, the nervous system. You have to deal with the organ and gland. And then you have to dig into the emotion, energy, emotion, into that zone. I call it zones because it's easier for me to picture it in my brain. So
whenever we hear the word zone, you're talking about chakras.
Yes, exactly. Because I have a lot of respect for chakras and where it came from. And it's 100%. They were way ahead of their time, right? But today, some people get, as soon as they hear chakra, they get a misunderstanding of what it is. And it's the zones is, I break it down scientifically, and then the expression or the consciousness at what that state of that zone is at expresses where that chakra is at, right? The conclusion of it is the chakra. But to break it down to be scientific, to help people who can't really get into that, I help them. For an example, you have, let's say the root chakra, for an example. You have the adrenals, that's the organ and gland. The muscles that are responsible for that are your legs. Okay, so one of the emotion standpoints for that is standing up for yourself, right? So if a person has a root chakra
and
issues,
legs were always my weakest muscle.
Exactly. That's what you're going to see. Now, if a person wants to know that scientifically, why? Well, the legs would be the last place a person stores fat on, the more cortisol levels they're producing, because the higher the cortisol levels, the more likely the organs, the fat around the organs is going to take the extra fat.
Which is why they tend to have more apple-shaped bodies.
Exactly. There you go. So another thing is, from 1 to 8, you're going through the consciousness of standing up for yourself. You're learning the consciousness of what it's like. You're going through the root chakra. Who's my family? Who can I trust? How do I survive? What is safe? What isn't safe? How do I walk and how do I stand up for myself? So the emotion that you'll find a lot with people that have a dysfunction with the root chakra is, I look for the legs being tight, levels of anxiety, or the nervous system showing me anxiety, right? So I'll do a couple muscle testing with them. And then I look for their beliefs. A test that you can do with someone that has really, really bad issues with being I call it stuck in fight or flight, is they stress about money. Subconsciously, money's an issue. They can have money in their account, but they still work as if they're broke, and they live a life as if they're broke, right? or they have bad spending habits. So if we have, one of the exercises I like to do is take a piece of paper, draw a line right down the middle. On the left, how much money's coming out. On the right, how much money's coming in. Most of the time, you find people have more money coming out than going in, or most people never even look at their bank account because it's a trigger. Money, safety, security are triggers for people that are stuck in fight or flight in the root chakra. So adrenal fatigue it is the consciousness, the scientific consciousness, or the expression of what we understand when the body has a hormonal imbalance of the root chakra. So when you look at it, you can't help this person unless you go through all four. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of different things for the audience today to help them get through it and recognize it more. And then you have number 3. So number 1, you have the adrenals, cortisol levels being out of balance. Number 2, you have the chakra itself. Number 3, you have something called the reptilian brain. You have 3 parts of the brain: reptilian brain, emotional brain, intellectual, okay? Scientifically, reptilian brain is still considered to be the reptilian brain. But in science, it's called the limbic system, the limbic brain, and then the neocortex. All right. So the more stressed a person is, the more their consciousness is going to be pulling from the reptilian brain. The reptilian brain is going to be activated. So the chance of this person having emotional issues in relationships or being present in a relationship is going to be very high. The chance of this person being intellectual, that's like the last stage. I like to make this example. Imagine you have a house, you have a basement, first floor, second floor. The first floor is where everything that you depend on to live in a house safely is at. Your AC, your food, they'll control your heater. Everything is in the basement. The first floor is a stove, a TV, and your partner and your kids. The second floor is a room that you have with a nice desk with the view of outside. It looks beautiful. And this is where you want to write your journal. This is where you journal. This is where you create your content. This is where you create ideas and become creative. If there's a flood in the basement, a person is going to be spending most of their time in the basement fixing the flood because it's going to wreck the safety of that house. By the time they come up to the first floor, they're not thinking about becoming creative and going to hang out upstairs. They're most likely starving because they're skipping meals. So by the time they finally get their meals and finally do that, then the time that they can spend with somebody, they barely even have energy for. So they can feel irritated because they couldn't do anything for I, but they're spending time with we. Mm-hmm. And then usually they sit on the couch and they have some type of compulsive behavior with overeating or some type of addiction. You're going to find addiction and adrenal fatigue hand in hand. So anytime I know someone has adrenal fatigue or too stressed, I'm like, what's your addiction? Work can be an addiction. Alcohol can be an addiction. Overeating food.
Chocolate,
right? And then after doing that, they feel guilty. So then they'll go, oh man, I got to go to the second, I got to create. They feel guilty and they think about how they should be upstairs creating something for their life to change this pattern. What I'm trying to say is when a person is stuck in reptilian brain, that's the basement. Then the second floor, they barely have time for emotional. So if they can have a partner that's complaining that they're not getting time, or they can feel guilty because they're not there being present with their kids or whatever the case, or their friendships, to the point where by the time they're doing up there, they're just playing catch up. They skip meals. So a person with adrenal fatigue is going to be skipping meals. They're going to be pushing themselves even more. You're going to find people go to the gym. One of the things I have clients do, I have to understand, I teach them, you can't strength train right now 5 times a week. What is strength training? What is training a muscle? Becoming catabolic. What does cortisol do? It makes your body catabolic. It breaks down muscle tissue. It breaks down tissue. Breaking down is what catabolic means. Anabolic means building. Sleeping and resting is anabolic. Working out and running and exercises is catabolic. If a person is already catabolic and we make them go to the gym and we have them in the gym and they're pushing themselves, they become more catabolic, which makes them more stressed. So then they start to cycle all over again. And most people look for exercise because it makes themselves feel better, because that's the only way they express their emotion, energy, emotion. So I have to teach them other ways they can have expression to express that emotion. Because if a person has too much emotion in their body, then what happens at night is that emotion overfloods their brain like a toilet being backed up. And what happens is this person starts overthinking about their life. And to numb that overthinking, wine, drugs, some eating can help numb that down a little bit. So a person that's stuck in the root chakra usually is disconnected from their body. The more you're stuck in the root chakra, the more you're disconnected from your body, because the more you're working from the ego, in my opinion, there's no science prove that, but the more you're working from the ego and the GPS system to keep you safe on earth, and you lose the connection to your higher self and to spirit and to something bigger than yourself to have faith. So you're stuck in fear, not faith. And the brain only entertains one at a time. You can't have faith and fear. So,
and I want to make a note on this, what you just said about the root chakra, because I think it's really important to note the differentiation between a balanced and imbalanced root.
yes.
Or zone 1. Because a lot of times we think, oh, then spirituality must be to be disconnected from my body. You know, if it's the upper chakras, then I should be like only meditating, only hanging out in the attic. And it's not that. We don't want to have the shadow of the root chakra, which is the worry about survival, the worry about safety, the reaction, the anger at every other person and not at you. And it's like, that's really coming from the ego, which is also connected to solar plexus. But when I think of that energy, it's very different than the energy of like a grounded root chakra,
100%.
which is someone who's like really in their body and feeling things and connected to earth and connected to dance and movement. And I see sometimes people lump the two of them together. So they think, oh, root is worse than third eye. Third eye is where it's at. And then they try to disconnect themselves from the body because they think that, oh, if you're focused on the body, that's not spiritual.
No. And thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely not. It is when the adrenals are having adrenal fatigue and it has a dysfunction that correlates and will make an unbalanced root chakra. It's very important to have your root chakra, when you're balancing your root chakra, then you're able to work through the other chakras in a balanced manner. Mm-hmm. Some people can't meditate, or some people can't have a hard time using their imagination because they're so stuck in that subconsciously. So no, you want, in my opinion, the way I vision it is the root chakra keeps you on earth, right? There's a benefit of having fight or flight, right? It saves our life. It gets things done. But being stuck there all the time, it's kind of like you lose connection from what's above you, right? Which is, I like to say the universe, right? So you can get some people who get so out of balance and say the root chakra and the ego you want to destroy forever and you want to stay here. I work with a lot of those clients too. And when they're stuck in the spiritual and have no balance in their root chakra, you can find these people not really be there for their responsibilities, their bills, their relationship with their children. And one thing that I've learned from my mentor is that you have 3 different clients, and one of the clients will be the super spiritual, where they think when you're talking, they're looking at you and waiting for you to speak to basically show you how wrong you were and to show you how smart they are. But usually the more spiritual a person is and no connection to their root chakra, the more likely they're going to have money issues with being broke.
Go to Venice Beach.
Exactly. So I remember I had this conversation with this one client. She was telling me that she had a spiritual coach. And I have no problem when I work with a client that they have coaches or whatever, because most of my clients are going to have a chiropractor, a therapist. And I'm like, okay, awesome. And what she was doing with me is when I would speak about something, she would turn down everything. She'll send me emails and she'll see me copy and paste emails from her spiritual coach on what they're saying. And then she would try to put me in a group chat with the spiritual coach. And I'm a very respectful guy. I like to avoid conflict. And he was basically telling her like everything opposite, like nutrition, sleeping, everything. And I was like, okay, look, maybe you should go on your journey and go that way. But long story short, I get these all the time, these clients that have these coaches. I told her, in my mind, I didn't want to say anything. I wrote in my notes, just, be aware of that. And then she ended up telling me that she had to fire him because he kept on coming. And then she got another one, was a woman. She kept on coming. And they were basically overcharge her and then started borrowing money and things like that because they were having financial issues. So at first, I didn't believe my mentor when he told me that. I'm like, oh, I got to see that. But then I started to see the cycle. And that happened like 3 years ago. So as I started seeing that cycle, I became aware of it because
Yeah,
it's
the
important to have.
embodiment, if the embodiment is not there, then yeah, you have all these ideas that you talk about in your head, but you're not living it. And that's why, to me, like working out is a spiritual practice because I'm feeling my muscles and it working together. I'm creating more groundedness and connection to the earth, which is my body, which is the collective, and seeing it as the altar, not this thing that's outside of me, but seeing myself as that. However, I also remember I had a friend who I was traveling with for some time, and she was like a bikini bodybuilder competitor. She was only body. There was not, all she could think about is, okay, what am I going to eat? And this, and there's like, when we would travel, it was like everything revolved around her food schedule, you know? So it's like the importance of like, yes, be in your body and know that you're not your body. Like, cultivate a personality and know you're not your personality. Work on your mind and you're also not your mind, and have spirit and also know you're a human, and like the duality of all of it.
Yeah, balance. I tell people all the time, the hardest thing for me to do is I have to sell balance to people. You know, people come to me like, oh, what do you think about this one diet? Like, what do you think about that one diet? Is it working for you?
Well, it's confusing. I mean, I've asked you about so many. I'm like, what do you think of that? This person says about form, even just of form and exercising. People have so many different, you know, contradicting facts. And I think that contributes to our adrenal fatigue. Because we're trying to be healthy and we're trying to do it right. And this one documentary says go vegan, and this one says go paleo, and this one says macrobiotic, and that one says Ayurvedic. And we're like, what do we do? And then it's like, people say, listen to your body. And it's like, well, you can convince your body of anything.
You can.
Yeah.
Placebo effect, right?
Exactly.
One of the things I do with a client is if they're having that and they're feeling with anything, with diet, with anything, I say, try it and document it. So for an example, if you're trying different diets, okay, how's your bowel movements? How's your sleep? How's your skin? How's your energy? How's your mood? How's your stress? And then usually you'll see people, when they start documenting it, they'll have a belief that this is the best diet in the world, but then they start seeing differently when they document it.
Right. And it takes a few months too.
100%.
That, like, for me, raw vegan was great for the first few months because I had all this toxicity in my body that I needed that. And then after a few months, it wasn't. And
that's what makes you awesome, because you're able to understand that, right? And, you know, it's all about us becoming a teacher of ourselves. Right? I can't tell you what's best for you and say, like, you got to ignore yourself. That's why the worst thing you can do is rob someone from their experience. That's the last thing I ever want to do. So if I see a person that really wants to try this one thing, I'm like, try it. And they're like, well, this person said this and that person said that. When you get two people that go contradict each other, the best thing you need to do is try both of them and see what works for you. Because one works for a group of people that may have toxins in their body that knows, plant-based was great for them. Another may have issues when it comes down to dysbiosis in their gut and having digestive issues, and notice that any plant food is making them bloated. So going carnivore for a little bit, it's going to help them balance out the SIBO, that the small bacterial overgrowth is going to die off. Dysbiosis is going to die off. And both of them will have great, but what you're going to see, and most times you're going to see people come out on YouTube or come out and admit that they had to go back and have meat, or they had to have, go back and have plants. And not a lot of people are actually admitting it because they created a brand, behind it. But long story short, that's another thing. Telling yourself the truth, being honest with yourself, and being clear are two things that are very important for us to navigate when there's a bunch of different confusion and distractions.
Yes. So I want to talk about body types and adrenal fatigue, because I have read that there's an adrenal body type, and that looks like more of an apple-shaped body. You tend to put on not just fat, but even have like a sturdiness around your waist area. So would you say most people who have adrenal fatigue were like born with this body type, or it develops? Can you be pear-shaped and have adrenal fatigue? Great question.
So adrenal fatigue, and you can learn this in the book Adrenal Fatigue by James L. Wilson. He has the best book on that. Adrenal fatigue can start at birth. It can start when you're in the womb. If your mother has adrenal fatigue, you're going to be born with weak adrenals. And then when you're a child, you can get diagnosed as attention disorder or ADHD because the nervous system is being overwhelmed. So trying to get me to sit down, my nervous system's overwhelmed. We overlook a lot of things. Number one, we overlook the nutrition that most people are taking in. We overlook the lights. The lights hitting our skin creates cortisol levels that go up, EMF, right? We overlook a lot of things. So if you have a child that's not sleeping, that has weak adrenals from birth, then has lights around them, and then has to sit in a class for 8 hours, and you can't get this child to sit down, and that's not even including the toxins in the water and the air, etc. they're going to get diagnosed with attention disorder, right? Or ADHD. So a person can be born with weak adrenals. The adrenal body, when the body's under a lot of stress, here's what happens. The body, it is called, they don't believe in adrenal fatigue as a term. So one thing you'll learn is that it's hypoadrenia, right? Hypo, it means low, adrenal means adrenals. The production of the adrenals producing enough cortisol is low, right? So what happens is you'll find people start having, the first thing I see, blood glucose issues, blood sugar issues. Another thing, so if a person has blood sugar issues, that means that what's responsible for blood sugar? Insulin. What's responsible for, so the more stressed a person is, your body goes into your hypothalamus pituitary adrenal, your HPA, gets a signal from the nervous system that they're stressed. It can be stress from the environment. It could be stress from your digestive tract. It could be stress from a virus. Those are the top three that you usually can see. When the body gets that signal, the hypothalamus communicates with the pituitary and adrenals to have an end product of cortisol and adrenaline. When that is produced, a person now, if a person doesn't have sugar in front of them present, the body will produce its own blood sugar through gluconeogenesis. Your liver has stored glycogen. It will pull that glycogen out. Now, when I went to school, we also learned the more stressed a person is and the less glycogen they have, they can start converting muscles from their arms and their butt and their legs into, you can break down muscle tissue and protein into glucose as well. I don't want to go that deep, but I just want to throw that out there. So if a person is pulling out blood sugar from their liver, now blood sugar is present. That means insulin has to be present. So then insulin comes in, takes the blood sugar out, and then a person starts having something called hypoglycemia or become hypoglycemic. And then they start the process all over again. How can they naturally bring up their own blood sugar?
Which is different than diabetes, because I think sometimes you go to a regular doctor and you're like, check my blood sugar. It's like, oh, it's normal, because they're only looking at the extremes, right?
Yes, and there's something that I came across called the bell curve, where if a person does not get diagnosed, doesn't hit the specific numbers that they're looking for to be diagnosed, they're left with syndromes. That's adrenal fatigue. They're left with syndromes because they're not Cushing's and they don't have Addison's. You're left in between. You're left with syndromes. So yes, it's different when you go in, but in the book Adrenal Fatigue by James L. Wilson, who's a medical doctor and who did it for over 25 years, what he explains in the book is that diabetes, you got to see which one came first. Is it diabetes or is it the thyroid? The adrenal's not working properly. So I'm saying all that to say, if you look at someone who's a diabetic or a pre-diabetic, they store most of the fat around their belly. If you look at someone who's going through adrenal fatigue, they can start storing their fat around their belly. Now, women and men store fat differently. Women usually store it around their belly and their hips. Men store it around their chest and their belly. So when it comes down to body types, the more, it's called visceral fat, the more fat that we store behind the fat or behind our skin, the more likely that there is a metabolic syndrome present. And you usually can find, if someone has metabolic syndrome or prediabetes or blood sugar issues, that's why I say blood sugar issues, because they didn't get diagnosed yet, it can create adrenal issues. If they have adrenal issues from cortisol, then they can create blood sugar issues. You got to see which one came first. But the protocol that I put people on takes care of both. So we're not guessing. And in the book, the book that I referred to, the author explains in that book that most every time a person that has adrenal fatigue has blood sugar issues. So this person's going to be tired. This person's going to be always craving sugar. This person's going to be having, I can get into more details about the symptoms, but this person can be having issues with feeling lightheadedness. This person can feel, when they eat sugar, their body becomes resistant or glucose intolerant, where they get more tired after eating. So there's, based on the blood sugar and how the blood sugar works with the response of insulin and cortisol, the body thinking, let's look at it from a non-scientific approach. If the body believes that it has to survive, what are the most important things to the body? The organs. Fat is stored energy. The body brings stored energy around the organs. And the organs of your heart, your liver, usually non-alcoholic fatty liver is being looked at or looked for, and the belly. So yes, the adrenal fatigue body can come in different shapes, as you can say, due to men storing more fat around their belly and chest, and women storing more fat around their belly and hips and legs.
So if someone's listening to this and they're like, I feel like I store some fat around my belly, but it's more around my legs, does that mean they have less chance of having adrenal fatigue or no?
No, absolutely not. Because then we have to look at, you don't just look at one thing. My brain does not work like that. I look at everything holistically. So you look at that, that's the last thing I really look at. I look for what's their problem first. They'll give me symptoms, digestive issues, sleeping issues, PMS. And then as they give me these issues, most of the time when I'm working with clients, it's on Zoom. I can't even see their body. Then I fill in a blank for all the rest. I'm saying, okay, do you have more stored belly fat? Do you notice it's hard for you to get up in the morning? Okay, do you notice that you always stress about safety and security? And then I go down the list and then I'm like, okay, I know what I got to deal with now.
Got
And
it.
these are sometimes the deeper the client is, the more challenging it is. You have to have a strong skill set to coach this type of client because you're working with a client who they always got the result by working more.
Mm-hmm.
The approach that I have to give them is not working as much. That goes for exercise, that goes for everything. And when you do that, you build a consciousness out of the safety and security. You build a consciousness out of being fight or flight. When you're no longer in fight or flight, you don't know who you really are. So we have to create a new version of you in your imagination, your higher self, the best version of yourself. We have to create a version of you that you know you're capable of getting to, and we have to create a dream. So there's going to be, I have a way that I want to bring the how a person get the results, but one of the things is finding what your purpose is, what your dream is. What are you willing to change for, right? So a lot of the things that I try to do is try to get them to see things, bringing the subconscious out with a lot of presentations with them, a lot of artwork helps me a lot with my clients.
So yes, let's talk about now healing this.
Yes.
So let's say we're at stage 1 of adrenal fatigue. How can so we're noticing maybe there's a bit of tiredness. Maybe we've done a test and our cortisol levels are, at this point, is it too high or is it already too low if it's at stage 1?
Stage 1's too high.
Stage
1's high all throughout the day. This person feels at an all-time high. This is usually, we can feel this in our 20s. You can feel it at any stage, but I find it with myself and with, you see your story, a lot of my client story, we started off in our 20s when we first start to get out of college, and, you can go out and drink with your friends, wake up the next day, don't feel anything. Your body never, is never sore. You feel unstoppable and you do a lot. You grind out, and then you go into stage 2 where it starts to drop in the morning, and cortisol levels are meant to rise in the morning. Usually light hitting your skin turns on the production of cortisol. That's why going to sleep with a phone in your face or the TV on and sleeping all night, you're not allowing your body to really get into deep sleep. So, yeah, if you want to help somebody, there's a couple things I've been saving these lists of symptoms. Cognition, a person has a hard time staying focused. A person does not feel motivated. Nothing really makes them happy, or they don't want to participate in fun. Not because they're a boring person, it's because they just don't have the energy. Low sex drive is a huge one. Cravings for salt. The adrenals, there's a connection between adrenals and salt. When the body has a lot of adrenal issues or imbalances, that creates the body to get rid of a lot of fluid. So one of the things that the body wants to do is hold on to fluid. If you meet someone who's a pre-diabetic, they usually pee a lot, right? So a lot of the times this person can get caught peeing out a lot of the micronutrients and the minerals like potassium, salt, magnesium. That's another one. So you have digestive issues, fight or flight or stress. Cortisol turns on sympathetic nervous system, turns off digestion. So when you eat, food just sits there and doesn't get digested properly. So you'll see things like SIBO, IBS is an easy one to see with people. Okay, then you get waking up in the morning is really hard for this person. It's really hard. You get a person that they are starting to refer to themselves like a different person. I'm not who I used to be. I used to do this. You hear them tell these stories on what they used to do and how they used to have energy, and they don't have that. Sugar, craving sugar is going to be another big one as well. Storing weight around their belly, unexplained weight gain. When you look it up, a lot of people talk about losing weight. I run into probably in every 10 people, 1 or 2 people who lose the weight, who are going through malnourishment of not gaining weight because they don't eat. A lot of people who are on the fight or flight don't really have an appetite, especially in the morning time. Because cortisol levels being produces gluconeogenesis and blood sugar. By the time afternoon comes around, they can find themselves hungry. And if they're not prepared, they're snacking on a bunch of different things that are now bringing their blood sugar up and down. So those are just some of the symptoms. And I named other ones. I know when I'm done with this, I'm like, I forgot to say these 5, but I'm going to try to have a reference list to all this. I can send you, or I can have it set up on the link in my bio on my social media. There's 6 things I do. Okay. Number 1, first thing I do on the first day, I'm talking to the client. The more stressed the person is, if they're in stage 1, the more I can dance with trying to do dream mapping, something called dream mapping. Number 1 thing I like to do is sit a client down and figure out what do they love enough to want to change for. So there's 2 questions I go through with them. Number 1, what is a goal that you never accomplished before that you really want to accomplish? Number 2, how would your life change when you accomplish this goal? Right here, it brings them into a different state. I'm bringing their imagination in, and they're getting out of the fight or flight. Because fight or flight makes this person fear and doubt and focus on what is 100% something I can do and I know I have the facts behind. When you bring up faith and you bring up the imagination, these are things that you're looking forward to, right? That you can see yourself doing. So those 2 questions usually get a person to wake up. Then we carve out their dream from there. Then we make a dream map, put that in a circle.
And I just want to add to that for me, I always tell people my greatest healer was not the foods. It was not the herbs. It was not any of those things. It was connecting to my dharma, my soul's purpose, because that was the missing link of why I felt disconnected from my body, from my mind, from everything, and me connecting to something larger than me and having the sense of direction and purpose. It's like it made me not want to worry about my health anymore, whereas before that, it was like I was obsessed with my health. And if I wasn't like eating, I was thinking about what I was going to eat and then like reading about what to eat. And it was just, and in a way it was a passion, but then it was like, what is the point of all of this? Like, to me, the purpose of health is so we can live our dreams, so we can fulfill our dharmas, not so we just get a gold star of having perfect digestion and perfect health and perfect hormones. It doesn't even actually exist, right? There's always going to be something. So I think that this is so important because, also when you are in the healing journey, it might feel like a sacrifice at first of like, wait, so if I go to dinner with friends, like I can't eat the pasta that everyone's eating, or I can't have that like birthday cake of my friends. And, especially when it comes to adrenal fatigue, like sugar is a really big thing. And that for a lot of people is the one thing that they don't want to give up, and not just like refined sugar, but like bread and pasta and like all of those. And sometimes you just have to connect to something greater than you and realize that you being low in energy, you feeling just depleted all the time, you not having the cognitive ability to finish the task that you're starting is holding you back from living like your best life and being creative and expressive and free and abundant and all of these things. It's like, is the pasta really worth it? And when you put it together like that, it's like, no, of course not.
That's beautiful that you just said that. Yeah. That's amazing, because that's exactly what I do with my client. After we figure out their dream, then we have to figure out what do they need in order to accomplish that dream. Core values. Most of them need me time, need time to move my body, need time to dance or do some type of artwork, need time to eat properly, drink enough water. So after making that list, we have core values. So when someone goes and tries to get you to do something that goes against your core values, you learn how to say no. I teach them your yes isn't good enough until you learn how to say no. So you can't have that pasta. You can have that pasta. How's that going to make you feel tomorrow? You have the weekend that you was going to work on your dream, but now you don't have the energy because you're recovering from last night. So I always ask them, is that going to help or hurt your dream? And that's up to you. I'm not here to force you to do anything. I'm here to work with you. You're going to see people have issues because addiction is a part of, the more tired a person is, the more likely they're going to have an addiction issue. Because they're looking for a way to numb themselves. They're looking for a way to connect to something. That's why they can become compulsive with spending as well. So figure out their dream. After we figure out their dream, we figure out the core values. After we figure out the core values, we see who respects our no. And for those that don't respect our no, at the moment, they don't get a dream team jersey. What's a dream team jersey? The people that respect our core values, we give them a jersey, and then we pull them to the side and we tell them ideas. We tell them what we're doing. We're telling them we're on a new diet, or we're telling them about how we're going to go for that one dream of ours. These are the people that get our time and energy when we have time and energy. The people who don't get a Dream Team jersey are the people who don't get that because we cannot afford to lose our energy explaining on why it's important to chase your dream in life or do something you love to people who are negative, who bring us down. And then when you're done with that conversation, you're not gonna, they're pulling you into a nightmare.
Right. And that's why I tell people to go on an advice detox, because we're so used to asking everyone in our lives for advice before we take anything that we lose sight of our own intuition and ability to make decisions and trust our decisions. And I know for me with my parents, like especially in my early 20s when I was going through all this adrenal and hormonal stuff, every time I was like going to make a change, I would like tell them. And it was like, but I was like actually really looking for their approval before doing it, which I would never get, but I would still keep doing it. And it was like this, like, and then one day I just realized, I'm like, why don't I just stop telling them everything I'm going to do and just do it? And it was like, but I didn't have that cultivation yet of my root and my solar plexus chakra yet, that I was still like needing the affirmation and the pat on the back and the support and feeling like I had someone behind me until I realized, like, no, bitch, I can stand on my own legs.
100%. 100%. And that's we're looking for confirmation, and usually that's solar plex. But yeah, 100%. I like that. What do you call that? Detox advice?
Advice detox.
Advice
yeah,
detox.
Just for 30 days
that.
of like, just don't ask anyone for advice, because, you know, like in any situation, everyone's going to answer from their level of awareness,
Yes.
right? And everyone also has their own agendas, right? And like some people's agendas is to keep you close to them.
Yes.
And keeping you close to them might be keeping you small.
Yeah. Yeah, because here's what I find out. When a person tells somebody, say if somebody is going to lose weight and their mother wants to lose weight but knows she failed in the past. And now you do your core values and say, listen, I'm not going out this weekend. And their mother or their friend go, why not? Why are you not going out? And it goes, because I'm trying to lose weight. And they go, oh, you want to lose weight? You think you're going to lose weight? But yeah, you're never going to lose weight. You're going to be fat forever. And what happens is at that moment, I try to get my clients to understand that's your friend or your family member projecting their shadow. Because deep down inside, they know they should be doing the same. And you can run in this to people's partners doing that. I've run into a lot of, just imagine 29-year-old dude with tattoos, right? Coaching your wife, right? When you're 45, a lot of men can have an issue with that, right? And start bringing down their wife. Oh, you're never going to fix yourself, or you're never going to do that because I don't know. I feel like some of the people that I work with, I notice their partners are scared for their partner to become a better version of themselves. They think you're going
to steal their girl.
No. I think they just fear of their partner doing things they know they should be doing as well.
Or even their partner feeling confident and maybe being like, I don't want to be in this relationship anymore.
Exactly.
You know? Or like, we always drink on the weekends. You want to leave that? Or like, we always order Chinese food and binge Netflix shows. Like, you want to leave that? And It's like, we want someone else. But it's like the same thing as like the heroin addict wants someone else to do that with them. And that's why most heroin addicts fell into the drug from their partner, introducing them to it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You told me a lot today.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to use that.
So in my own spiritual journey of really honoring the sacred feminine energy within me, I realized that we're not all the same and we all have different pathways that we can take that I put together in creating 5 archetypes, which I call the rose gold goddess archetypes. They are the embodiment queen, the womb whisperer, the intuitive oracle, the expressionista, and the joy priestess. And I've put together a free quiz so you can find out what your unique combination are. So the embodiment queen is the person who's always in her body, dancing, moving, very connected to her nervous system. The womb whisperer always knows where she's at in her menstrual cycle and probably has a yoni steamer in her bathroom. The intuitive oracle has 3 oracle card decks on them, a pendulum, and knows about their past lives. The expressionista is creating art through everything, through singing, dancing, writing poetry. Everything for her is an opportunity to create art. And then we've got the joy priestess who wants to laugh, dance, and not take herself super seriously. You can find her doing karaoke at an improv class or twerking it on the dance floor. You can guess which one I am. So you can head over to rggquiz.com to learn what your unique rose gold goddess archetype is. Again, that's rggquiz.com, and you can find that link in the show notes. And I've created custom graphics that you get in your results so you can share which rose gold goddess archetype you are. I'm super excited to see.
So when a person is going through, we have core values, they learn how to say no. And then when they start figuring out who's on their dream team, they start noticing how much time and energy they were wasting on the people that weren't on their dream team. And then we teach them the 4 pillars of health. So now that you have your dream, your core values, your dream team, now we have to keep you balanced. I like to call this the charger to your dream. Your dream is the battery to life. This is what I like to look at it. It's your battery life. It's what gets you through the day. It's what gets you up in the morning. But then that battery needs to be charged. And that battery is charged through, number 1, you need to make sure that you're eating appropriately for your metabolic type. You need to be eating at a point where you know what's helping you. With someone with adrenal fatigue, we have to be very aware of giving our body food that digests fast. Number 1, just processed food, white flour, even fruits that are on a high glycemic index. We got to be careful on, because remember, your body is going through stages of hypoglycemia when you're really stressed as it is. So if you give
like a banana smoothie with dates and
good luck. You're going to be dried out, and you'll notice what I
used to eat an acai bowl every day, and I thought, oh, I'm so healthy because I'm having acai bowls, and I didn't even realize a lot of places you go to, they're even using acai sorbet.
Yeah,
you're straight up eating an ice cream bowl after the gym and thinking it's healthy. Or back when I used to think pinkberry was healthy.
Yeah,
I was proud of myself for having a frozen yogurt because I thought it was marketed as this really healthy, low glycemic thing. And we don't realize too. And it's and I think there's a whole conversation, and we won't get into that of some people say humans are meant to live off carbs, and they're the high carb, 30 bananas a day people. And then you have people who are carnivore, and there's everything in between. Mm-hmm. But what I hear you saying is for adrenal fatigue, there's a specific.
Yeah, for them, you got to see what stage they're in. The more sensitive a person is to, and there's things that you can see when you're sensitive. If you eat a banana and you notice that you're starving in the next hour, but back in the day, you used to eat a banana, it used to keep you full for the 3
oatmeal.
hours.
My mom's eat oatmeal every day. It's so good for you. And I would eat it and be so hungry after.
There you go. So then right there, that's an indication that there's something going on with how that food is being oxidized or digested. So what you'll learn is you want to, most people that I get, the first thing we start doing is the most important meal is going to be breakfast, but in my opinion, it's going to be their dinner. Because I find most people eat too many carbohydrates before bed, which then brings your glucose levels up. And then those glucose levels start to drop around 1 to 4 in the morning.
Okay, I keep hearing mixed things on this. Some people are saying don't have fruits in the morning because it brings up your blood sugar levels. So instead, have them at night because you're going to sleep, and it helps
aid digestion.
Yeah, and also it's with your muscles, it brings glucose back into your muscles, so it's helpful. So I heard this whole move, because everyone would always say, and even Ayurveda always says, have fruit before your meals, so have it in the morning. But yeah, I saw this book, and it was called Only Eat After 7. So you know how they say don't eat after 7? This book is only eat after 7. Was that by a guy?
He had glasses?
Yeah, I don't know who. I just saw it at the airport, and I was this is interesting. So what is your take on?
Got him a book deal.
Yeah, exactly. You just got to come with something revolutionary, even if it doesn't make sense.
Well, so there's the science behind what he's suggesting, just based on what you just said. When you go throughout the day, you burn through glycogen. So if you eat at night, when you eat those carbs, those are most likely going to be stored as glycogen. That's what he's trying to state. But remember, the best way to see what works best is to see where you're at, right? A person that has SIBO, it may not be best to throw a whole bunch of prebiotics or soluble fiber because you have bacteria. Exactly, because you have bacteria in the place of in the intestines that it's not really supposed to be in. So we're going to be overfeeding them. So you have to starve them out. So it all depends on where the person is at, and that's where in life this is something that you'll learn. The more fight or flight, the more root chakra imbalance that you have, the more imbalance, the less you are present in your own body, and you're easily manipulated. And that's why when I said in the beginning, there's a deep down personal opinion that I have on why it's not being really looked at. Because if you read the book, James L. Wilson, Adrenal Fatigue, you're not gonna regret it. He shows in that book that most disease that we deal with today is due to the fact of the adrenals not producing enough stable cortisol. And one of the steroids they give you is a cortisol steroid to help you fight inflammation and disease when you're really sick. Because a person has, and one of the first things that come up is respiratory diseases are big. What I find is most people have a fungal infection, right? Because of the adrenal fatigue or the
fungal guy. That's how he's known on TikTok now.
Exactly. I'm trying not to make no more fungus videos on TikTok. But a person is wide open to a fungal infection or a parasite because the body's stress suppresses the immune system. It's good. Cortisol has good benefits. One of the things is helping with inflammation. So if you have not enough or an imbalance of not enough or not producing enough cortisol levels, you're going to have issues with inflammations and things like that. So we have the dream, core values. Okay, so then we have nutrition. What I find that works the best is most people are not eating enough fat and protein with their dinner. Fat and protein slow down the digestion of carbohydrates. I've worked with 300 people that have this problem. I just made that up in my mind right now. I was going to say thousands, but it's at least from 300 to 1,000 people. As soon as I fix their dinner, they sleep throughout the night. Because if you eat too many carbohydrates, that doesn't mean you can't eat carbohydrates. Too many and not enough protein.
It's the ratio.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Not enough protein and fat to tie it up. Your glucose levels will drop while you're sleeping. What happens when glucose levels drop? Hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia can turn on the sympathetic nervous system. So now your cortisol levels are up.
Should it be like based on your weight? They say like 0.8 grams according to 1 pound of your body weight is how much protein you should have.
That's a good question.
Or some people even say
scientifically, yes. We learned that in school.
It should be a gram of protein.
to sustain muscle, especially when you're losing weight or you're trying to.
But that's very hard.
It is. In my opinion, this is just my opinion. This is why you can't, when I work with a client, it depends on the person. 0.8, I try to get a person to hit 80 grams of protein before I put 0.8. So if I have a male that's 250 pounds or I have a woman that's 170 pounds, I'm not going to tell them to hit 0.8. That's going to be around 130, 150 grams of protein. No, we don't do that. What I first do is instead of getting, and you have to be careful with some people on giving them macronutrients. Some people have eating disorders and it can be a trigger to weigh themselves, to track food. So we make it like, okay, here's a meal to have. What do you think about this meal? Oh, I like it. Try it. Let me know. So for example, for dinner, one of the things that we do for dinner is we can do, this is a perfect example. We take a potato. If you want a carbohydrate, take a potato. We slice that potato to nice circles, put olive oil in a pan. We put those potatoes in there, oven at 350 for about 23 to 25 minutes. We take it off. We put some sea salt and we let it cool off. When the potato's cooling off, we're making that potato into a resistant starch. A resistant starch becomes a strong prebiotic for their microbiome, for their good bugs. But it also can cut the glucose index down on that potato. So now it doesn't digest as fast. And it keeps a person a lot more full because there's a lot of fiber. Then we take a protein source. It can be a salmon. It can be ground turkey, ground beef. We take a protein source, and then we have like an avocado with that. So we can have ground turkey, avocado, sweet potato for dinner.
How much avocado?
1 avocado or half an avocado. Yeah. And then what a person would do is they'll track that and see how they sleep. If they notice that one of the signs you're going to see is peeing throughout the night. When a person eats too many carbohydrates, they pee throughout the night. They wake up out of their deep sleep to pee. They sweat in their sleep, or they wake up and can't go back to sleep. That's a sign of the blood sugar dropping or the body trying to get rid of extra glucose. So then they'll wake up in the morning feeling tired and they have no energy. So they go straight to a pot of coffee, right? And then they start the cycle all over again. So the first thing I like to do in nutrition is fix their dinner, see how many carbohydrates they can withhold. So if they notice that even with 1 sweet potato, they still have that problem, let's cut it down to half a sweet potato and see how we do.
So kind of like the worse the adrenal fatigue, the lower in carbohydrates they need to be?
That's a good question. No, that would be ignorant for me to say. Sorry, no.
Because I hear mixed things of if someone has adrenal fatigue, they should be eating a lot of sweet potatoes and different carbs like that.
Yeah.
But then I also hear like the blood sugar perspective. So
we want a complex carbohydrate. So we got to see how they do it. At the end of the day, we don't want to put them on a keto diet. And just don't want to do it. In my opinion, you just do not want to do that. Because when you go keto, you put your body under stress to produce its own, to make fat into energy, right? So that could be too much for somebody. Complex carbohydrates over processed and simple. So you can have your carbohydrates, but try to track it. If 1 cup of rice still makes you feel exhausted, then try a half a cup. If a half a cup does the job, try that out. And then in about 3 weeks, try to do 1 cup. You see what I'm saying? But either way, complex carbohydrate, protein, or protein with some fat. Not a bunch of fruit, not a bunch of potato chips, not a bunch of processed carbohydrates. Those are the things that are going to spike and drop really fast. A person is going to be kind of, I'm not going to say dependent, but they can utilize a complex carbohydrate for energy, because if they don't and they go too low carb, then that means their body has to either break down protein for energy, muscle for energy, or fat for energy. And usually they have to put themselves into ketosis, and it depends on the person's life demands. If a person is a construction worker or athlete or a mother, it can be very hard to do that.
Yeah,
right?
and I think it also depends on like what you've been eating before. Because if you go to a lot of cultures and you're like, you can't have rice anymore, they're like, what? And just that will be so stressful and like give them adrenal fatigue.
Yeah,
you know?
no,
So
you don't want to do. You don't want to
really
crush someone's
depends.
belief system.
Yeah.
Right, and that's why I'm very careful and sensitive on. I know one thing: high glycemic carbohydrates and processed food like processed bread, potato chips. That right there is a big no-no when you have adrenal fatigue. A big no-no. You're gonna be left hungry, overeating, a bunch of issues. Complex carbohydrate, protein, and fat is what we're looking to combine. Now, that's number 1. Number 2, controlling the caffeine. So usually I get a client that drinks 2 to 3 cups of coffee. I'm not gonna say we have to take you off 100% coffee. That is extreme and that's hard. What I like to do is free up a little bit of energy little by little. And the more a client sees that or a person sees that, the more motivated they are to continue to grow. So instead of 2 cups of coffee, let's start the morning off with an Americano. That's 1 shot of espresso. A cup of coffee can be anywhere from 100 to 250 milligrams of caffeine. An Americano is 1 shot of espresso.
Wow, I always thought that espresso had more caffeine than coffee.
I did too, because you'll go into the coffee shop, people like, let me get a red eye, right? 3 shots of well, it depends, because you can make 3 to 4 shots of espresso in shots of espresso in 1 cup of coffee.
Right, just depends how strong it is.
Exactly. So Americano, we dilute and we water down the espresso itself, and then we can give them a hit of that, because you don't want someone
Or a
with adrenal
latte,
fatigue.
maybe with 1 shot.
A latte is cool. Trying to put some type of protein and fat with the caffeine to slow down the digestion of caffeine.
Like collagen or protein powder?
We'll see how they do with that. Like when I usually have a whole setup at home, but since I came down here, my safest bet, macadamia nut milk. When I put that in, it has a little bit of carbs, has more fat to hold back the caffeine from being digested so fast.
What do you think of bulletproof coffee?
I was about to tell you that. That's when people did bulletproof coffee, and that's why people can see benefits with that. You just got to be careful. The more stress that you put yourself under, the more you're going to produce your own blood sugar.
Yeah, to me, I tried the bulletproof. It made me anxious.
Yes, because you can create a huge imbalance with your energy sources that your body's going to use. You have all this fat, but then now you have all this caffeine at the same time too. And remember, fight or flight needs glucose.
And it's like black coffee. It's not, there's no milk in it too. That's why I think it's so strong.
Yeah, it all depends on where a person is at too. The more stressed I'm not putting someone on bulletproof. Personally, I'm not. People have their own way. They have their own reasoning. But I've seen so many results fixing dinner, fixing coffee to an Americano instead, and putting like there's a supplement that it's not collagen, but it's a coconut. It's called Laird Hamilton Creamer. We put the original
coconut milk
one.
powder.
Exactly. We put that in. We mix that in with their Americano. We take out sugar immediately. Right. I hope when I find a client that has adrenal fatigue that puts sugar with coffee, I'm like, oh my God, just taking the sugar out.
Or even a lot like oat milk. Hello, can we have a conversation about oat milk? Because everyone thinks oat milk is so healthy, but actually they have found that it has tons of vegetable oil in it.
100%. And I was looked at crazy when I said that about a year and a half or 2 years ago.
Canola oil, I believe,
Canola oil, yes, it can be made of canola oil. Or they like to make things sound like they're healthy, like canola oil, grapeseed oil.
But it's not actually made of a canola plant. It's vegetable oil is not like actual vegetables. It's just a completely refined, super high in the omega-6s, I believe, which are the ones that are bad for you, that counterbalance the omega-3s. Like, it is toxic.
Yes, that's
I went to LA and I couldn't find anything besides oat milk because it's like the thing right now.
Yes, and oat milk, almond milk, got to be careful with them because remember, they can be enzyme inhibitors. What does that mean? Especially nuts and seeds, they're enzyme
almonds
inhibitors.
Are sprayed with glyphosate.
Of course. And enzyme inhibitors is when I work with a client and we're trying to figure out what's getting their digestion out of balance, I find a lot of nuts, seeds, and grains are the ones that I go for first.
Yep.
So
because nuts are in everything healthy these days.
Exactly.
You know, you get a non-dairy cheese, nuts. You get for Stephen, my husband's birthday, I got him this like keto vegan cake and I was like eating all of it myself. And I'm like, I probably just ate like 20 bags of cashews.
Yeah. And what happens is the body's not digesting look, when you eat food, you want to be able to digest, assimilate, and eliminate. If you can't do all three of them, you're going to create some type of malnourishment, right? So a lot of people who eat all the nuts that are not, that's why it's called sprouted nuts. When you sprout nuts, look at the water when you're done sprouting them. You see a bunch of white gooey stuff. That blocks enzymes from digesting your food. So they're called enzyme inhibitors. They don't allow your enzymes to break down and assimilate your food, which then leaves you hungry, tired. And then now your organs that depend on nutrition is not getting nutrition, skin issues, all that crazy stuff. So yeah, that's why I go with coconut.
What about flax milk?
Flax milk, I don't have enough information on flax milk.
What about pea protein milk?
Pea protein can be very hard to digest. Vegan proteins are known to be very hard to digest. You can look up Dr. Ted Neiman's work. He has probably about 100 presentations on YouTube explaining scientifically on how eating plant protein is very difficult to break down and it doesn't meet anywhere near the benefits that meat brings you. Plant protein tries to protect itself when you try to digest and assimilate it. And sometimes that protection can cause inflammation. It can cause a bunch of different reactions in the digestive tract. And it's hard to get the protein, the end result, get the protein you need from it. But if a person is going, this is how I like to think about it. If a person is drinking milkshakes and they're trying this new vegan protein shake, that's a rainbow bridge we make them. Mm-hmm. Because if I tell the client, this is bad, that is bad, this is bad, that is bad, then I'm overwhelming them with information.
So what milks do you drink that are?
I get this one macadamia nut milk, or I get home. I used to, I'm not in LA at the moment, but I used to go get fresh made almond milk from Sprouted Nuts or coconut milk. Then I go for.
So what about the coconut milk that's like in the container at the store?
I'm not drinking it. Personally, I'm not.
Do you think that the milks that are in the fridge are better than the shelf-stable ones? Or it's the exact same thing, they just put one in the fridge?
You mean the ones like
sometimes you'll find a coconut milk and almond milk in the fridge and then some are on the shelves.
Got you.
I'm assuming the ones on the shelves have more chemicals in it.
Yeah, because the preservatives to keep it from being refrigerated would be my opinion.
Right, but someone told me if you actually look, I guess it depends on the milk, that it's the same. It's just the marketing because we're mentally used to milk being in the fridge.
You know what? That's a good point because after you open up the ones on the shelf, when I was
you have to put it in the fridge anyways.
You have to put it in the fridge anyway. So I saw that when I was at a coffee shop one time. I'm like, what you doing over there? I caught them. So yeah, no, I try to stay away from those, but.
If you had to choose a non-dairy milk at the store, what would you choose? Worst
case scenario? See, it works for me. Macadamia nut milk works for me. Like I had it this morning because I'm traveling right now. So I like to throw in some fat and protein. But my partner, she does good with oat milk.
Okay.
Right. So she does good with it. So
I've been doing flax.
Flax has a lot of protein in it too.
Yeah, because it had the protein and I was like, I feel like it's at least not a nut. I feel like I don't need more nuts in my life.
Yeah.
Because I always eat these bars with nuts in it. So I'm like, I feel like there's a lot in there. So because of that, the seed and the hormone balancing. But at the same time, I tried to make flax milk myself at home and it did not work. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, how are they getting this flax to turn this milky? Something's
I remember
going
you told me that. I remember we spoke about that.
Yeah, I
You were
tried
telling me about
making
that.
every kind of milk, and the only one that really came out good was like the cashew milk, and the only one that really came out good was like the cashew milk because it's very fatty, or the almond milk. Even the coconut milk, it separates like within hours, and you have to like totally mix it every single time and it hardens. So the fact that they're making these milks stay in that consistency for weeks at a time shows the level of fillers. I mean, I notice it myself. I still drink them often, but I will get bloated after. And I know that.
Yeah, because they're hard to digest. And remember, anytime your intestines are inflamed, the nerves that connect to your intestines connect to the core muscles. Your transverse abdominis turns off, bloat. So yeah, in my opinion, when I work with a client, we get them from being super numb and stressed to then when they're getting energy and they're feeling a little better, they become aware of that. You know what? I'm going to stop drinking oat milk, Nate. Why? Because it makes me bloated. It makes me tired. And I'm below, they can't see. I'm like, okay, thank God, right? Because now they're getting in tune again. So my number one thing is to get rid of the worst things and then get them sleep, get their nutrition for that. So that's the nutrition part. We do nutrition. Then we do movement. My goal with movement is try to get them not to overtrain. And I call it the high vibe walk. Remember your dream you told me about? Go find someone who's living your dream, who's teaching or talking about it on podcasts, on YouTube. Go find them now, save that podcast, get that ready, bring some headphones with you, find a neighborhood you want to live in, or find a park that brings you good energy. Number 3, nobody negative can come with you. Number 4, no phone calls, no work. I don't care. Put your phone on airplane mode, save the episode, save the music, or listen to music that brings your energy up. Go for that walk for 60 minutes. Visualize yourself becoming the person that you want to become. You're changing the state at which you felt from before. You're getting more into I don't say you're getting into the 7th chakra, the 6th chakra. No, you're actually elevating and you're moving your emotions in a different way. Instead of, I gotta go to the gym, you're walking, visualizing, and then start studying the people that live in the neighborhood you want to live in. What kind of car do they drive? How do they walk? How do they talk? What do they smell like? I became obsessed with that because that helped me escape. Sometimes we are stressed because of life, work, family. And sometimes when we're stuck in that environment, it's hard to even think positive. But if we escape that and put ourselves to go on the high vibe walk, you're elevating or you're rising your vibration. When you're bringing up your vibration from feeling good, breathing, getting the body to pump itself, and having an imagination that's being fed, you're putting yourself in a position where when you go back to that negative situation, you have the inspiration and motivation you need to get out of it and stay true to your dream. So we try to put them on some high vibe walks, try to get them relaxed. Usually the first week or 2, I give my client homework to get a massage. Being touched is very important as far as when you're feeling tense, stressed, the muscles get tight, and it helps them relax a little bit. But training, I tell clients all the time, if you can't go in the gym and beat last week's training program, you shouldn't be in the gym. You train to have progressive overload, or you train if you want to be like a aerobic athlete with bike or marathon. Then you train. I get that, but when you train in the gym, you train to beat number. You train to progress. So sometimes we go in the gym and just beat ourselves up so we can feel something, so we can sweat. And then at the end of the day, nothing was beat. And then this person has a high chance of
because we
overeating.
think going to the gym is about burning as many calories as possible. So you go to the classes where you're doing the boot camps and a million things. And that's what I used to think, right?
Exactly.
The more I sweat, the better of a workout it was. So I would go to like hot yoga because I'm like, oh, now I'm like sweating even more. But that actually doesn't, like maybe you're burning a little bit more calories because it's just hot, your thermal temperature, but you're not increasing your daily caloric burn the same way that you would if you increase muscle.
Well, the chances of you overeating are very high after. See it all the time. Number 2, HPA axis communicates with the HPT, hypothyroid. I mean, the pituitary thyroid. So the hypothalamus, pituitary thyroid communicate. The higher levels your cortisol levels are, the more issues you have with your thyroid stimulating hormone. What does that mean? Your body thinks it's so stressed that it's not going to survive. So what it would do is it needs to save energy. So you'll start seeing people get hypothyroidism. Their thyroid drops. One of the first signs you see with a person is their hands, they're cold because they're not regulating temperature, because that takes rest of metabolic rate, that takes energy. So the body tries to find a way on decreasing its rest of metabolic rate so it can save energy. So you used to eat 2,500 calories and maintain your weight. You eat 2,500 calories now, but your body saved energy, so it don't need 25 no more. It needs only 2,000. So the extra 500 calories, you end up gaining weight. So a person will start gaining weight. So when a person goes to the gym and they add more stress on themselves, the chances of them going home hypoglycemic, hungry and tired, and then too stressed, compulsive eating, addiction, etc. So
yeah, like since I started lifting weights, I realized that you don't actually need to spend that long in the gym. And I would hear people say that before. I'm like, yeah, right. Like you're lying. But now I'm like, even if I just do 4 exercises in that workout. And before I used to think, oh, it needed to even just be like a leg day only or this. And now even like today I did like maybe 2 or 3 leg exercises, 2 or 3 upper body, but I'm going at my maximum weight. And with every single set, I'm like, okay, can I go heavier with keeping the form? And, I'm lifting heavier than I ever thought that I would do. I had this belief that, I would get bulky if I lift heavy and, you just judge. And I think it's also our society. But I've realized like, I feel so much stronger. Like when I travel, I don't have to worry about like, oh my God, I'm traveling by myself. How am I going to get my bag on the overhead thing? Like that used to stress me out so much of like, what if no one can help me? And like these days, stewards don't really help you with that.
No, they don't.
So it's like little things like that I'm able to do, but I actually just like feel better in my body that like I used to like wake up and check my stomach first thing of like, am I bloated? Like how fat am I today? I was like the obsession. And now I never do that. I don't even weigh myself. I don't need to because I know like no matter what, I'm going to be consistent in my exercise. And it's not like, oh, I have a photo shoot. I need to like lose weight for the photo shoot. It's like, I'm always going to, and I look better than I ever have before. Because
you look great. You look great. When you came in, I was like, she's looking strong. Remember, you kind of thought I was crazy when I first told you that. I'm like, yo, you don't have to hit the gym every day. Because you hear all these experts say things, right? But you're a beast too, because I gave you a hard workout and I was for sure because I remember you say, I don't get started. I'm like, all right, I'm going to give you a hard workout. We worked heavy and hard. And then I text you the next day, I'm like, you sore? You're like, no. I'm like, what? There's no way she's not sore. But I believe it because I remember you telling me, you like to sweat and you like to push your body. And I remember the first time we trained and I was demonstrating all these things and I was showing you the importance of lifting heavy versus this and versus that. And I was scared I was going to lose you as you believing me. I remember that day. I'm like, oh man, she's probably not going to believe me. But I saw your videos and you continue to increase your strength training.
Yeah. And also like coming from background, it was like yoga, you know, it's like no weights at all. And then the next thing there was like Pilates and it was like, so there's a little bit, then bar, now you got little 2-pound weights. And then when the pandemic happened, I couldn't go to the bar class anymore. So then I started to do YouTube. Then I was like, let me try this like strength training one, but it's like an aerobic strength training and then getting a little bit more and a little bit more. So like, yeah, if I met you in my like deep yoga days, I would have been like, hell no, I'm not going to do it. Whereas I needed to just get like a little bit heavier. And now I've learned too, a lot of these compound movements that you see people do that are like you squat and then you do a bicep curl and then you do an overhead press, like all with the same weights. I'm like, that's such a waste of time.
Yes.
Because you could squat so much heavier than you could do a bicep curl. So why would I basically reduce my squat to whatever I can bicep curl, which is like 10 pounds and I can squat like 200 pounds. Like, why would I do that?
Exactly. Because it looks good.
Yeah.
Remember I told you it looks cute.
Right.
Oh, that's cute. Let me see the video. Oh, that's cute. Now you have people going to the gym doing that. When you do a compound movement.
You think if it's more complicated, it's better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the fitness industry confusing people. That's the fitness industry. I'm a certified coach, a trainer. I seen it myself. And I got results because we did what the truth of the matter is, if you get the results, you're no longer my client. So,
that's why I don't text you anymore. No. I used to always send in my squats and I'm like, yo, I got this.
Yeah, you got it now. Yeah, because with you, we saw some imbalances. I was teaching you things that is boring, but I'm like, yo, I'm telling you, we got to fix this, we got to fix that. And then you started killing it, right? You don't need me no more.
Right. Instead of doing like 100 of these like glute bridges, I'll do like 10 of them at my max, which I sent you. What did I do in that one I sent you?
You get a lot of weight. That's when I think you were in Texas. I was like, what is she doing down there right now? She's showing off now.
Yeah, exactly. But it's crazy because I feel actually even more like compact, and not that I'm doing it because of my size, but it's like when it's true, like muscle is just smaller and denser than fat.
Yep. And putting stress on the nervous system builds muscle, right? The body your body doesn't go, I want to look sexy tomorrow. The body goes, okay, we have to adapt to that resistance. And that's the strength. So if you adapt to that 10-pound squat curl, now if you do it faster and faster, you're not going through the muscular system of adaptation. You're going through the cardiovascular system, which is your cardio. But we pull the client from the gym, we get them high vibe walk, and then what we start doing is people lose weight, right? We track our food, we track everything as far as making sure we're doing all the things right if they do have a weight loss goal, but people start feeling better. You're still moving your body. And guess what? A walk can get you, it depends on how much weight you got on, anywhere from 200 to 350 calories burned, sometimes even more than that. So you're still burning a lot of calories, but now when you go home, you lifted your energy and you lifted your organs are working properly. Everything's not catabolic, it's anabolic now. So the chances of you overeating are very small. And the chances of you sticking to your dream and staying clear on what you want in life, very high. The chances of a distraction bothering you, very small. And now we get consistency. So
if you went to the gym and you're like, I'm so hungry, that means you overworked yourself out.
No, that would be wrong for me to say. Because when you break down muscle tissue, the body wants protein and restore the glucose. When you eat that meal and you're still starving and you're overeating, you notice that, then that's a pattern we have to pick up on. Okay. So it's normal for your body. As soon as I lift weights, I know exactly what my body wants. If I give my body a banana or something like that, I'm going to be starving. My body wants protein and a little bit of glucose, and I'm good after. So that's number 2. So we have movement, dream, diet, quiet. So me time and sleep are 2 things we need to focus on. We getting better sleep because we're fixing our carbs, but during the day, you need to press time out. You need to cut things off. You need you time, and that's appropriate. Sometimes we put we and all before I. I can't love you until I love myself. So for me, I'm selfish. In the morning when I wake up, my dogs know not to leave the bedroom with me. My puppy comes down with me, she chills, but other than that, she doesn't bother me. But I'm not feeding you in the morning. Sometimes if my girlfriend wakes up early, she knows I'm over here in the living room and I'm studying something and I'm having my cappuccino. Give me 30 minutes. Because as you know, as an entrepreneur, and even as a mother, people listen, or as someone who's a student, wherever you are in life, you know when it's like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, emails start calling, text messages start coming in. I need to talk to myself first, right? So it's important that it's in the morning. I wake up before people wake. I like waking up at 5 in the morning. I'm wide awake at 5. I think that I get a head start on life at 5, right? If I wake up at 5 and the average American's waking up at 8, I got 3 hours extra a day. Times by 7, I got 8 days while that person has 7 days, right? That's just how I think about it. Now I go to sleep early. I go to sleep at 9 o'clock, 9:30.
So that's when I'm working now.
yeah, with the opposite. So my brain just works better in the morning, but I find nobody bothers me. If I want to go to the coffee shop, ain't no traffic in the coffee shop. There's no line at the coffee. I get the world to myself, and I appreciate that. So making sure you have time to turn your brain off, and then making sure you get sleep. I, before we, always. That's quiet. Then the extra 2 I'm going to throw in there. So we have diet, quiet, movement, dream, right? The extra 2, sit down with a piece of paper. On the left side of the piece of paper, write down how much money is coming out your bank account. On the right side, how much is coming in. I want you to have a goal. Start off small. How can we stop having 3 if you're having financial issues? Financial issues can make a person very stressed. Work, finances, environment. So one of the things I personally see, and I'm speaking out of a personal experience with this podcast with adrenal fatigue, root chakra, reptilian brain, is I continuously see a person stressing about money. We have to clear that up. So 2 things. If a person actually shouldn't be stressing because they're good financially, then we make them recognize that and they can take a vacation. Could you tell this person, hey, why don't you just take the week off? Oh, no, I can't do that. So we have to show them, hey, you can do that. Look, that's good. Number 2, if they feel like they can't, it's because their expenses may be so high that even though their income is good, the expenses still got them working out of the root chakra and safety and security. So how can we decrease that by $300? And what you start seeing is most people eat out, and eat food that makes them tired. So now when you're no longer tired, now you have the energy to cook. Now you have the energy to cook. Now you're not spending as much as money. And then we come up with a couple ideas on how can we add $300 coming in each month. And this puts us at a surplus of $600. And then it makes a person clear. I can't tell you how many times I ran into people that was having money come out that they didn't know, or they forgot, or they recognize. Some people overhire coaches, right? So one of the first things I like to do is to see if you can afford me. If you're giving me your last dollar, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say no, because you're going to be working out of the root chakra working with me. I want what's best for you. So I'll give you references to go listen to and then save up and take care of your responsibilities. Sometimes there's too many coaches, too many something we have to figure out. And then the last one is, after we got their dream, after we got their finances, then we start to move and focus on stretching the hips. So I got the muscle, I got the emotion, I got the emotion of the belief of being stuck there. And one of the things when you figure out someone's dream, if you continuously run to someone with a subconscious that's responding that they can't do it, the more that they have a trauma running the subconscious. And sometimes when you work with people, the deeper the trauma, as someone who is a professional, I refer them to go see a therapist, because I feel like I can do everything, but there's a time and place where I have to say, you have to go see a therapist. Therapists are very skillful on working with people, their trauma, they're specialists for that. So sometimes people need to go see that. But if I see a reoccurring issue, the first thing we go for is sometimes it's appropriate to remove them from that environment. That's why the high vibe walk is important. Because if you have a father that traumatized you and you live with your father still, that's hard, right? But opening up the muscular system of the quads, hamstrings, calves, but you're going to see tight quads, tight calves. Tight quads pull somebody into anterior pelvic tilt. Sometimes they can turn their feet out, or in the first stage, quads get tight, adductors get tight, knees knock, foot pronates. Depends on what muscle gets tight. But long story short, the anterior pelvic tilt is going to be there. When the anterior pelvic tilt is there, their hamstrings are going to pull. So they're going to think the hamstrings are tight because they're pulling. The hamstrings are being tight because they're being pulled from the hip flexors being tight. So you run into a lot of people who go to therapy or years of tight hamstrings, never can fix them because that's not the root cause. So we open up the hip flexors, we open up the calves, and then we get them to find a way to be grounded. Tai Chi can do that. To go barefoot in grass or put your feet into the earth and do 10 to 15 minutes of Tai Chi, you're grounding yourself. But most importantly, when we fix those hips, then we get the body posture to stand up nice and tall.
So when you say opening them up, you mean by foam rolling?
Foam rolling the quads, hip flexor stretch. Usually when you find foam rolling, you get someone to lay down. I usually do one hip and quad at a time. You notice shakiness. Some people may start crying. Some people may start feeling emotional. Some people may hold and suppress these emotions. When emotion gets suppressed, it marinates itself into the nervous system and into the muscular system. So they may get that out. It may be expressive at that moment. But when they stand up, the more you work on fixing your anterior pelvic tilt, the more likely you're able to stand up straight. When you stand up straight, you're able to metaphorically stand up for yourself to the world. Understand? So when we get all those working together, and I'm pretty sure there's other things I do, but while we were talking, I was like, all right, I have to put at least like each of them into a box. But when you get all those flowing together, then you get a person who overcomes the issues they have and accomplish their goals. And guess what? A person does this with me if they like it or not. Sometimes you can't tell somebody you're making them do this for this reason, because sometimes their belief system may be too strong in a way where it's hurting them and not helping them. And that's not my place to say that to them. Sometimes they can't handle that. So sometimes I'm like, just go for a walk and go for a walk in this neighborhood. I'm not telling them why I'm doing it, right? But they start feeling better. And they're like, you know what I noticed, Nate? I'm able to have my ideas. And they tell me, and I'm like,
going
okay,
on a walk like changed my life. Like everything that I, especially, again, in my early 20s, when I would take these walks every single day, and it allowed me to process and get so many ideas and clarity around like patterns in my life and why this happened and how I felt the way that I did. And even just today, I mean, I think one of the hard things is you take a walk and you use that as a time to get back to all your texts and your WhatsApps and your emails and send all my voice notes. And I catch myself doing that a lot. And it's just such a reminder of the importance of taking a walk where you're just like listening to music or even listening to nature and just letting yourself be in that state where I get a lot more ideas when I'm walking than if I'm just sitting and meditating because my body is in motion so my mind can open.
Active meditation. I'm not sure if that's called active meditation, but I like to call it active meditation.
Yeah, walking meditation is a huge thing in the Dr. Joe Dispenza retreats. So
for real? You keep mentioning him. I never read anything about this doctor.
You would love him.
I know his face though. I see his videos sometimes. But absolutely, because one of the things, I'm very active. My nervous system's sensitive, so I can't sit down and meditate. It's almost impossible, right? Because my body just has a lot of energy. But when I go on my walks, I'm able to calm down my nervous system. And I had 1,000 thoughts when I first started it, and it broke it down to 100, then to 10. And then it's like slow motion. I pick a thought out, I digest it, I play around with it. I'm like, okay, this is good. Oh, this one's no good, throw it out. So by the time I'm back home, I'm more clear and more grounded. I did a nice walk before coming here on the beach. But there was something I want to mention. In the body, Eastern body, Western mind, the author explains the importance of understanding that a person can almost get in an addictive, subconscious that wants to be, I call it being addicted to stress because they're uncomfortable not having so much stress hormone in their body. So I want to make that clear as well and understand the consequences of too much stress.
Because it's the urgency culture that we live in as well.
Yeah.
That like everything is urgent, needs to be responded to right now. And I know for myself, sometimes I feel like, if I just need to respond to everything. So then I'm like free from it.
Yeah.
But then there's another thing to respond to, another thing to respond to. And then you're always responding to life rather than creating.
Yep.
So for me, one thing that was helpful is this free app you download called Boomerang, and you can pause your email and unpause it.
Oh, wow.
So I just pause my email. So I'm not getting emails all the time and I can like focus on my work. And then whenever it's time for me to check it, I'll unpause and I'll get like, read all 10 of them or whatever. And then I'll pause it again. You could even set it up so just once a day you get all of your emails.
Wow.
So little things like that. Also Facebook newsfeed eradicator. It's another free thing you download so you don't have. Because sometimes I use Facebook groups in Dharma Coaching Institute and stuff. So I have to go on Facebook, but I don't want to get like distracted by like someone in high school had their like 7th baby. Like I don't give a fuck, So I need to eradicate that newsfeed so I'm not like, I wonder what they're doing. Oh my God, they're out of jail? What?
Right. Right. I thought you had 3 more years. Let me do research on that.
Exactly. Wow, he did this crime crazy. Like
I thought you get 30 years for that.
Yeah.
Let me look that law up. Yeah, it could be a huge distraction. One thing that I started doing and I teach my clients to do, especially entrepreneurs, 2 phones. One phone is where my music is at and my family, if they need me in an emergency. The other is my personal phone. My other phone is where all the social media is on, all my emails. And guess what? When I go on my high vibe walk, I leave that phone behind. When it's time for me to go to bed, I shut that off. I mean, I leave it alone.
It's funny because I just got a new iPhone. I upgraded it. So I have my old one. I was, most of the time you get rid of your old one, you just forget about it. I'm like, maybe I should, but the new one has a good camera. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing for mine too. My phone is broke. Like I have to update it for like the last year.
Maybe my family will get the shitty one, but then I have to carry it around. So how does this work?
Right. No. Well, what I do is I use the good camera and the good one for business. Yeah. Right? I have no guilt behind investing. I teach clients about money because you have to do a lot of things of coaching about money with them, with their mindset when a person is in fight or flight. When you spend $1, ask yourself, am I spending this dollar or am I investing? When you spend, the dollar goes and there's nothing in return.
Right.
When you invest, you spend the money and energy comes back. It can be money or it can be energy. So when I spend $7 on a coffee before coming here, right? It's organic coffee, only coffee shop in Miami I know if I got the macadamia nut milk. When I drink that coffee, it gives me the energy that I invested in. If I go to a coffee shop that has toxic coffee and I drink that, it makes me feel tired. So I just spent money. Anytime I invest money, I return. So my phone, I have no guilt on spending for the new iPhones because the new cameras, the new iOS on them help me in my business. So I'm getting, how much money you can make from your phone? And the other phone is if my mom called, hey mom, how are you? Hey dad. And where my music is stored. So when I'm done with work during the day, I don't touch that business phone until I clock in. Because if you don't manage yourself as an entrepreneur, you can catch yourself always I can't be grateful. I'm like, oh my God, this video only got 300,000 views. I have to get 3 million. I only have 270,000 followers on TikTok. I should be at 4 million. And I'm looking at that at 5 a.m. I don't do that. That phone is over there. Sometimes clients text me. Sometimes I have emails. I'm not conscious of that, because if I want to start my day off in a positive note and I see an email that I have an issue with, or something that happened on social media that disappointed me, sometimes I open up Instagram and I see something that happened in hip hop. You know, there's a lot of rappers getting killed, and that hurts my feelings. A lot of these people come from where I come from, and I see these kids getting killed, and I'm like, and then there's a video. And it happens to be the first thing that shows up on my feed at 5 a.m.
Especially on TikTok. I'm like, now I just saw like the most traumatic thing ever. And now TikTok thinks I like this, and it keeps showing me more of it. And I'm like training it. I'm like, not interested. But it's like, those are the things that are in the collective consciousness, because fear draws us in.
Exactly. And as soon as I feel that, now I had this idea of creating a podcast today and making videos. I'm not in the mode to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now my girl comes downstairs. I'm like, can you believe this?
Yep.
And then now my whole day is surrounded by that. And so one of the things for stress is, don't be on your phone. Don't put a phone on your face. The phone is not allowed in my bedroom. I have an alarm clock, and I have my personal phone there just in case there's an emergency, but I have it only for phone calls, and it's not allowed in my bed. When you have phone a light hitting your face, it turns on cortisol. It helps. It doesn't allow you to sleep deeply. And my TV has a funny TV show on, something that brings me a good vibe, and it has a timer on it. I got 30 minutes of TV. This is at 9 o'clock. I'm in bed by 9. They call me old, but I wake up with energy and I'm consistent. And watch who you're following and what you're following on social media. That's stressful. If you like it or not, stressful. If you're watching something and comparing yourself and it makes you feel sad, it may be time to give it a little break. Go build yourself up. So when you come back on, subconscious, you may be projecting your shadow. So go work on yourself, and then you come back, then you don't have that problem. In 2019, I noticed anytime I came home, my partner was stressed out. She was happy when I left, and she's upset when I came home. It's because she'll go on social media and see an actress book a job that she was supposed to book. And now she's crying, she's sad. So what I did with her, your consciousness is there. So if the universe was bringing something you was manifesting, but now you're being doubtful, you're crying, you got to be sure. The universe, hold on, hit the brakes. They're not ready yet. Hold on, they're not ready. They lost faith, or they lost positivity, or their frequency, their vibration went down. We can't pull it to them. It's not matching. I made her delete Instagram for eight months. So guess what you do when you delete the app? Now you subconsciously, you pull it out when you go on the toilet. Mm-hmm. You pull it out when you wake up out of bed. So there's no app there. And what we do is we put Audible there or iBooks, something there. And what book or what Audible book you're listening to is anything that helps you get and invests into your dream. Mm-hmm. So if you want to be an actress, you want to be a singer, whatever you want to be, you rewire your subconscious mind with someone who's doing it, and you learn.
Even like the difference of a podcast and TikTok. Like we were talking about this, and I'm like, oh, why isn't my TikTok really working? You're like, people who listen to podcasts are just at a higher intellect, Like we've been talking for like 2 hours, and it's like people who can like be in this conversation for this long and let yourself go deeper. Whereas oftentimes people who are on TikTok and these different social media apps, it's like they're training you to become ADD. Like even if you weren't, I was like, I never thought I was ADD or ADHD. And then TikTok's like, do you just keep scrolling through different videos and then you can't do things? I'm like, maybe I do have it, And it's like, well, the technology's creating it in your brain. Because if I lived in nature, I definitely wouldn't feel this way. So I think that even just like listening to long form conversations, books, deep podcasts, even just having conversations with people in your life instead of this like quick hit where you're like, if you listen to 10 seconds of our conversation right now, you wouldn't even get a glimpse of this whole conversation, its layers and this and that. But people think, oh, I listened to this 15-second clip on adrenal fatigue. So now I know about adrenal fatigue. I know about this.
Exactly. And that's why I'm very careful how I say things, because I understand that's the world we live in now. Yeah. And I understand that people are looking for wax. You see what I'm saying? Naturopathic people are woo-woo. People who say the word chakra are woo-woo. And what they'll try to do is try to discredit me on what I know and what I'm saying. And so I have to say it a certain way. And I have to, and it's a gift and a curse. It
and
taught
also
me.
the algorithm trains you also to say things in this way to trigger controversy.
Exactly.
So then
Exactly.
people on TikTok, most of the videos that you're seeing, the only reason why you're seeing it is because it's controversial. So then you've created this belief that everyone is fighting it and it's not safe. And I see so many people, I don't want to share online because I'm afraid of being canceled and people hating me. But the reason why is you're only seeing those videos rise to the top because again, the collective consciousness is very root chakra imbalance. And we want to focus on someone else doing something wrong because if I know that thing that they did wrong enough, then I'll be safe.
There you go. And
then we think the whole world is like that and then we don't share our voices.
Exactly. And then the root chakra being turned on actually feeds off the 808 beat, the beat boom, boom in hip hop you hear today. So,
well, I have a different thought on this because a lot of people, I have heard people say the 808 beat is very root chakra. However, I've also heard people say that 808 can be very grounding. So I think it's also like your intention around it as well.
100%. I'm with you. That's why there's an artist, I'm not going to mention his name because he's going through a lot. There's an artist who made that beat popular in hip hop, but had positive messages behind it. That's not the hip hop we're in anymore.
Right.
Hip hop we're in is boom, boom, boom. I'm going to do this to you. Boom, boom. I'm going to take this person. Boom, boom.
Yeah.
It's threatening. I got 700.
It's using the collective energy that you feel when there's that base, but then towards violence and
Exactly.
ego.
That's exactly. So when I'm sitting here and I'm looking at my nephews rhyming a song that is talking about threatening somebody.
Right. And they use
I'm
a
like,
lot of
"Do you
nursery rhymes too.
Yeah. I'm like, do you understand what you just said?
Yeah.
Like that, what does that do to you?
Right.
And I sound old, like my grandfather used to talk to me when I used to listen to hip hop, but it's a little different. But I'm saying all that to say it's feeding off fear consciousness. And there's a book by Napoleon Hill that I find fascinating. And he has a conversation with the devil. And in the book, it's him having a conversation with the devil, and the devil's laughing at him like, you think I'm a red guy? No, I'm just negative consciousness. And I come into your life when you're negative. I come into your life when you're smoking cigarettes, when you're not sleeping, when you're drinking beer, when you watch entertainment. And I rule your consciousness and I run your life like that. I don't run your life by, sleeping over you, etc. And in that book, Napoleon Hill is trying to show you that negative consciousness or becoming negative is being pulled into the metaphoric of the mean or bad energy in the world. And we get fed off that. 98% of people get fed or being fed off of it. For example, compulsive spending, addictive behavior. That's why you have the smartest people in the world figuring out how they can keep you on the app longer. That's why it's free, right? And look, I benefit from the app because we would have never known each other without it. But I'm the type of person that I'll go missing for 3 months off TikTok. And people are like, what happened to you? So I just needed a break. Sometimes
I was wondering where you were.
I just needed a break, right?
Yeah.
Because I start to notice as soon as I feel like I can't be creative with my work and I have to manipulate my work for the algorithm, it disgusts me. I can't fake it. We did something, I was going to say this to you earlier. You see how we did the thing for the reel, the Instagram reel? I'm not good scripted. I would never be a good actor. Everything, when I speak, I just flow.
Yes.
If I have to repeat something or restart something or act something out, like, okay, in 3 seconds. Welcome back to my video. No, you can't say it like that. You got to do it like this.
Oh my
Hello.
God, I did this TV show yesterday and the episode was 10 minutes and it took us an hour to do because of how many times they make you repeat yourself. And I'm like, I don't feel like I'm in flow state. And for me, I'm the best. Like in this podcast, there's 0 edits in it at all because it's just like you're just channeling source and able to bounce back. And I believe that even that gets you out of adrenal fatigue because you're in, again, consciousness that is streaming through you instead of being so in your head and trying to get it right. And like that perfectionism, I believe that's such a huge cause of the adrenal fatigue.
100%. And that it is. You'll read that in the reference. I wanted to make one great reference. It was the James L. Wilson book, Adrenal Fatigue. He talks about that, being perfectionist because you never rest. Nothing's ever good enough.
Right. And you're afraid of what will happen. And it's like, follow that fear down. Like if I stop producing at the level I'm producing, then I will lose my money. Then I will lose my relationship. Then I will lose my house. Then I will, and like keep following that thread till the end of it. And then you'll realize even if all of that happened, you'll be okay.
So I'll share something really personal
Mhm.
because I feel like I love how this conversation just went like this. But I'll share something really personal. I recently just, as you know, I moved out of LA, right? People thought I was crazy. I was at an all-time high. I was getting the celebrity clients. My girlfriend lived right down the block from, the studio she filmed at. And then I noticed most of the people I was getting was stuck in fight or flight, rich people that are successful on TV. Your favorite hip hop artist or your favorite actress or your influencer, I had one of them as my client. And I started to notice this pattern. When you live in LA, and this LA, let me just make this clear. I love the aesthetics of LA. I love it. But the truth of the matter is, for the most part, LA is more expensive than people can afford. Okay, so here's the pattern I've seen. People end up buying a house they really can't afford or paying for rent that they really can't afford, which then leaves them in a position where they can't rest. They have to work, work, work. Number one. Number two, if you did something amazing last night in LA, congratulations. But there's a new start tomorrow morning. So when you wake up, you never feel like you're enough. Number three, you could drive the best car in the world. Your dream car is a Mercedes, and you worked your butt off and you got it. There may be a 16-year-old kid that pulls up in a Mercedes, and a dude that's 47 pull up in a Mercedes to the right of you. One is purple, and the other dude got a mohawk with it that's yellow, right? What I'm trying to say is nothing is really enough. So when I was there, I saw myself being stuck. This is where I start to say to myself, Nate, you have this problem. Because I hit my 1 million views on TikTok, right? I felt nothing. I said, I need 5. Then I hit 5 million. Felt nothing. Then I 10x my business. Then I was making all the money. Then I'm on red carpets with my partner. Then we had in Bryant Park, New York City, shut down their theater during COVID for her premiere party, for her TV. Like, I'm talking about everything. I'm at my favorite rapper's house. I'm doing all these things. And I'm telling you right now, I felt nothing. I drove my dream car, felt nothing. And I wanted to know why. Subconsciously, I was trying to keep up, trying to survive at the level I wanted to survive. And I felt scared to rest. And when I granted myself to rest, there was an opportunity you just can't say no to. You have this one person that wants to work with you. You know, if you help this transformation, you know that your business is going to be good for another year. So one of the biggest fears that I faced was, one of the things I started learning is I had to heal my root chakra. I had unfinished business from my childhood trauma that I never finished. When I left New Jersey in 2012 for a scholarship to Delaware for football, I never went back. So when I go back to Jersey, I see my dad getting older, my brother's growing up, my friends and family, having kids. And I don't know what it's like. When I came home, I always felt like enough. I felt like rich when I came home, right? They're like, oh my God, you going to Starbucks? I'm like, Starbucks? I used to go to Erewhon's for my coffee. You know what I'm saying? So one thing I recognized is I had to sit myself down and say, Nate, you can buy this $2 million house, but if you buy it, just know, if you think you're working hard now, you can't rest at all, because the mortgage, the responsibility, the taxes. Okay, Nate, you can go back to Jersey, to right across from New York City, buy your dream house for half of that price. And when you go home, here's the biggest thing of all. What did I say in the beginning? Money, tribe, safety. When I was in LA, I never felt safe. There was a whole bunch of armed robberies going on. There was a bunch of that. I'm from the ghetto. So the first thing that someone like myself would do is dare somebody to try me. I'm smarter than that. There's people out there that are tougher than me that will kill me, right? So I got a dog, a guardian dog, to protect my house, but that was more responsibility. I was trying all these ways to feel safer out there at the moment. It was a little difficult to do that. But the biggest thing is, if I buy that $2 million house, my father can't come have dinner with me tonight. I had survivor's guilt. As I was becoming more successful there, I felt less tired. I felt less successful. Who am I? The guy that I'm working with is 10 times more important than I am, according to the world. I'm doing social media. I'm trying to eat dinner with my partner, and people are doing a social media skit behind me in LA. And it was coming to this point. It is a beautiful place. It's me. It wasn't because of them. It was the position I happened to be in. And then the friendships out there weren't authentic. Because at the end of the day, a person is really your friend because they're trying to find a way to survive as well. It's hard for them, not the native people in LA, the people that are there to try to improve their career. Subconsciously, they're working out of the root chakra. So if I'm trying to heal and I'm trying to be your friend, or we're becoming friends, and I already have trust issues because I have root chakra issues, imbalances, then what happens when I no longer have videos at 1 million views or 300,000, I can't do nothing for you. Are you there when I need you? No. I saw that happen over and over again. And I wasn't crying out for help. I didn't even want friends. But I said, oh, thank God I ain't dependent on that person. So long story short, intuitively, I had this calling to go home. So to trust my intuition, I was doubtful. I started noticing my creativeness wasn't there. And I had no inspiration for life. Not for life in a way of like trying to harm myself, but I'm talking about like I would sit there and say, okay, I had to force myself to be creative and inspired. It was a struggle that I couldn't explain. So what I did is I called my mentor, who was like 56, 57 years old. This guy knows me like the back of my hand. His name is Bob Finelli. He came down and I said, if he tells me I got to go home, I'll go home. He came. I'm showing him the new car I got. I'm showing him my house. I'm showing him all that. And we're sitting around the fire. He comes over by me, gives me a hug, looks me in my eyes, didn't tell him anything. He says, it's time for you to come home. And I felt like crying. I felt like this little boy. I brought a house a week later. And so I'm saying all that to say, I was stuck in a cycle for 2 years because I went out there during COVID. I had to build a business. When I built the business, it was going very well. But then most of my things, I was being compulsive. I bought a Jeep. It broke down on me. Then I was like, I'll never buy a Jeep again. Then I ended up buying another Jeep a week later. That gave me problems. So I had 2 lemon cars back to back. Then I brought, so I started seeing myself. I brought a dog that was shipped from a different country here to protect my house. And that dog cost me over $15,000 to $20,000 of training because he had too much anxiety to where the trainer told me he doesn't want my money no more and told me I need to rehome him. So I lost my dog. So in the beginning, the first podcast, I told my story. It made me, I love my life, but it would be unfair. It would be too Instagram-ish to just flash how great I am and not show you, hey, listen, these are the side effects that came. But these are the things that sharpen my tools a little bit to become the best coach. Because when I work with someone, I see myself. So after going through this experience, I started noticing the universe was bringing me consequences of pain. I couldn't catch a break. 2 brand new Jeeps being a lemon car, you have to go through lawsuits for both of them. What are the chances of that? A dog that you buy that couldn't fit in my house, right? As far as like his personality, he just was too much. He needed special care. But I tried to force it. I brought him the best trainers. Still nothing. Accolades, after doing things, still nothing. Then I said to myself, I have to dig deeper. Because I would wake up I was disconnected from myself. So I ended up buying a home. And when I bought the home, that's why you have to take your piece of paper and start seeing what is smart financially do. I have the money. If I wanted to buy the house, I could have bought the house in LA. But I buy the house in LA to be empty. Then I started to see, oh, this is when my favorite artist talked about this in his song. I thought they were crazy for leaving this or doing that. And I made an agreement with myself. When I go back to LA, we'll be in a position where I'm not building and I'm sustaining myself, right? I'm not stressing. So I say all that to say, I was stuck in the root chakra, even in balance, even with success. And I noticed that I'm not going to become the best version of myself until I heal that. And one of the things I understood is that I need to go spend time with tribe. I need to go, when I drive my car, my dream car, where I came from, I don't live in the same neighborhood I came from, but I brought a nice house in the suburbs right outside where I grew up at. So I can dip in, dip out. I can see my girlfriend's family. We have family come over almost every day. Right now we have family watching our dogs. I feel connected. my family members they would put me in my place. See what I'm saying? Yo, you're crazy. This is how they say it. You bugging right now. Go sit down. My cousin came over, she's pregnant. She saw me working on Sunday. She said, yo, after that, go lay down. She was only coming to get a cup of coffee. She's like, yo, go lay down. But that's what I need. I needed that. I left 10 years ago. I needed to be grounded again. And then I noticed I don't need to kill myself with working all the time. I can take that rest from social media. I can take care of my mental health. I can take care of myself. And now it's hard to contain my energy because I'm so grounded and inspired again. Now I'm ready to take on the world. See what I'm saying? So I just want to personally bring my personal story in there to, make a full circle with this podcast to tell people the adrenal fatigue thing is real. I've been a low carb guy my whole life. The reason why low carb works because anytime I eat carbohydrates, I felt dizzy, I felt tired. And I used to think, oh, because of this, because that. No, it's because I was just too stressed. I was always in fight or flight. I've been a guy that sweated in his sleep. I've been someone who's had anxiety disorders, what they diagnosed me with, attention disorder, etc. So for me to be able to ground myself after learning on what caused these things, I fixed those things along with fixing the root chakra, the consciousness that can bring pain in your life as well.
Well, thank you for sharing that full picture, because I think sometimes we see a story as a before and after, and it's like even our right now is going to be the before of the future.
Exactly.
You rarely realize you're in the before. Most of the time you're like, well, it's the best I've been, and then one day you'll be like, oh, wow, I remember being in that state of consciousness where I always felt I wasn't enough or I needed to keep up with the Joneses or whatever else. So I think it takes a lot to realize even when you're successful and you're doing the thing that you're in one right now. And that even for myself and for every single person, like there's always things that we're going to be working on, and we're always going to be learning more about ourselves and having different versions of success too. And
exactly.
It sounds like you needed to go back to, you just finished your Saturn return in astrology, which is...
Oh, really?
Yes.
I gotta look that up.
Which happens around 28, 29, but it sounds like you needed to go back home to your roots and like heal what was going on there so you could come full circle, which often happens also during a Saturn return, especially.
Saturn return. I got to look that up because that is it's amazing. Astrology is the only thing I haven't dug deep on, and babies. The development, I know the development of the body with a baby as far as movement, but I'm talking about the consciousness and things like that because I'm saving that for when I have a kid. I want to test it.
Yes,
right?
yes.
I'm gonna be like
don't read too much, just be in it. Well, thank you for sharing all of this. I know there were so many gems. People can re-listen to this again and again. So where can listeners connect with you further?
BeGreatWithNate.com. My Instagram is BeGreatWithNate because somebody still got the with. And TikTok is Be Great with Nate. My podcast is Be Great with Nate. You got me so many people that came from the podcast on my podcast, 7,000 followers from our last conversation. And also, I'm just going to throw this out. I'm hoping you're okay with this. You also encouraged me to write a book. And you've been a great supporter in writing a book. I probably would have never even thought about writing a book until I was like 35. But you motivated me, inspired me, and you even gifted me someone that's helping me as far as with the process with it. So I'm truly grateful for you. And I tell people all the time, after we did our podcast, I got so many people that came over to work with me one-on-one, people that came to my workshops and stuff. I tell people all the time, you are the most authentic person that I've ever met that has a following. You're the most authentic one. Aww. And I tell them all that. They go, oh, she looks great. I'm like, listen, let me tell you something. She's the most authentic person. You don't see this thing on Instagram and then get this whole weirdo behind the screen or this person that's known to be not so nice. You get the sweetest, most inspiring person you can get. There's times where we used to hang out in LA after having our meetings. We just sat there and talked for 4 hours, and you were there. You gave me those, we talked in those moments where I was going through this situation, and having someone that is in a position that I can relate to as far as trying to take their business and improve their business was inspiring for me, right? So those things meant a lot. And I just wanted to personally thank you for not only the first time having the podcast, but the second time. And thank you for believing in me and helping me get my message out there because you've helped a lot.
Oh, well, I know you are a shining light that is going to really raise the vibration of the planet and that your story is so important. I tell your story to everyone. I'm like, oh my God, you can't believe it. He went from, he's the gangster medical medium. Like,
I love that.
And your book needs to be out into the world. Like people like you need to share their stories. And it's so refreshing to hear it from a different vessel that's not like, a super well-off white dude who is so disconnected from the pain and suffering of humanity. So it feels refreshing to hear it from someone who has experienced turbulence and doesn't have this just like, well, the book says it should be like this, but like a lived experience. And that's so refreshing. And I'm always here to support you. So thank you for being on again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All I got to say is, wow. I am blown away by the wisdom, the depth, the knowledge, the specifics that Nate shared on this episode. This was beyond any masterclass I have ever listened to on adrenal fatigue and just life. Because the truth is, the way that we're showing up in the world is going to reflect in our health. So that's what I love about this podcast is we take something as physical as our digestion and our adrenal fatigue, but we bring it up into the deeper realms of why this is going on. So thank you so much for tuning in. And if you loved this episode, I would love for you to leave a review. This really helps the podcast be listened to by more people who could deeply benefit from it. And as a free gift, I will send you my womb meditation. So this is a meditation to connect to your inner womb wisdom, to hear her answers and connect to your body's truth. So you can head over to the iTunes store, leave a review, take a screenshot before submitting it, and email it over to me at sahara@IamSaharaRose.com. And you can find that in the show notes, and I will send you my free womb meditation. Please share this episode with anyone that can benefit from it. Share it on your stories, get the word around. Imagine what the world could look like if we all come from a more peaceful and balanced place. We would raise more healed, empowered children. We would have less urgency culture. And I'm holding the vision for all of us, and it starts from within. So thank you for sharing this message, for amplifying Nate's voice. And I can't wait to have you back on the next episode. Namaste.